That wouldn't be surprising, Lars. Most hard rock you either have to leach or leach the tailings of a gravity circuit to get good recoveries. Because, goodness gracious, should have probably looked at my hair before I did this. Uh, uh, Anyhow, at least we finally figured out how to get the gold out of the resin. Oh my goodness! So, let's say we're in a much better place than we were a couple days ago. Hat hair day, yeah. That was what I was thinking too, Chris. Um, Plus, now that guy in Oregon, he's also got sulfides that he's going to concentrate. That an acid thiourea leach on that might work pretty well, also. And the problem with an acid thiourea leach, um, you'd you'd have to use a different resin if you were going to use resin extraction. I think you can use activated carbon. Uh, might be able to do well with a direct electrowinning setup too. Not sure, but that's the fun part of all this, Lars. Is everything's so ore dependent. You can't really just it worked there. It's going to work here. Nah, not really. Hello, Mr. Lodak. How's it going? Oh, yeah. If you get good recovery, direct electrowinning, it makes life a lot simpler in a lot of different ways. So, I say I'm a big fan of trying it, but you have to have a solution that's amenable to it. Not sure exactly uh, what the parameters would be. One thing that we found interesting, hey Sin, how's it going? Is this last week, um, we were going to do a number of tests um, the last few days of the week, but uh, the thiourea that I had ordered didn't show up. Instead, a bottle of soda ash showed up. It's it's just one of those things. Hi, Rock. Um, they just somebody put the wrong bottle in the package. You know. Oh, we're. I think most of us are doing okay. I got to go in for some, call it relatively routine surgery tomorrow, and so my next Monday I should be feeling much better. But unfortunately, I'm going to be eating a pretty much a liquid diet for the next 6 weeks. It's a hiatal hernia surgery, so I may be a little bit grumpy. A hiatal hernia, Rock, um, and it's not a huge problem right now, but it's going to get nothing but worse over time. Plus, due to certain situations which we're not allowed to speak of, I'm concerned that the health system may be less functional in the future than it is right now. So I'd like to get all preventive maintenance taken care of that I can. Those would be probably inguinal hernia, Rock, and I've also had two hernias, Operation Inguinal hernia. The first one was rather painful. The second one wasn't too painful, except for the fact they cut off the blood flow to my right testicle accidentally, and so that had to be removed. So I've had kind of mixed results, you know. Hey Keith, how's it going? Hope you're feeling okay. So I say, up until that last surgery, I'd always come through just routinely, no problem or anything. So now I've, yeah, right. That's correct, singular. Um, Oh no, Sam, it can be a lot worse. Eva's surgery uh, was that a little over a year ago, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, it was a lot rougher on her than mine. And my when they replaced my aorta, it was a much more serious operation. Uh, the only um, the only thing about that was I had no choice. I mean, yeah, 98% chance of survival sounds pretty good if it's where I was at, because it was 100% chance of death in the not too distant future if I didn't go through with it. This, on the other hand, it's purely optional, kind of a quality of life, and maybe later on the esophagus will, suffer so much damage that then they got to do some bigger maintenance and stuff. And yeah, that trust Lars to come up with a good good pun there. Yeah, I'll do my best to keep kicking, Sam. Um, and Eva doesn't have any bad feelings about this one, so I'm not terribly worried. Um, Lauren will be here at 5:30 in the morning to pick me up to go over to the hospital. They want me there at 6, and I can eat solid food until midnight and drink clear liquids until 4 in the morning. So that doesn't give me too many hours where I've got a problem. So that shouldn't be a big deal. But
I still don't want you eating after 9.
I don't see a problem with that, little one. That sounds reasonable to me. No sense pushing it. Uh, but anyhow, so that's the situation there. Um, but as I say, we were looking to do some other tests this weekend, and without the thiourea, I couldn't make fresh solution, and I don't want to do certain tests without making brand new solution to minimize variables. So instead, I tested how well you can keep using the same solution over and over again. Um, you're right, Chris. He says your diet's going to suck through a straw.
No straws, they can cause gas.
Rock, I would not. I would not do that awake. No, you can put my ass out. Otherwise, I might interfere with things. So just put my ass out. Don't keep me awake for surgery. So anyhow, one thing we did find out was the recoveries did go down some. Apparently, they've got slower, which makes sense. I mean, the thiourea, depleting, if it's an important part of the solution, well, the less you have, it's going to interfere with it. But it also drastically decreased the size of the gold particles. Uh, you notice in the past, the gold was coming off of the cathode in sheets and chunks and stuff like that. Well, the last 3 runs I did, they were all with used solution. Well, I was still getting like 80, 75, 80% recovery out of the resin, which, by the way, we have saved. We're going to try redoing it later. Um, the gold was also not coming off the cathode in sheets. It was more of a powder, and it got finer and finer as time goes on. Um, as a matter of fact, the last batch, pretty much everything went through a 60 mesh screen in terms of the gold. What I was doing for the previous couple times is I would uh, basically decant out of the electrolytic cell. Still having a little problem getting resin beads. So I'm going to have to come up with a better solution to keep the resin beads out of the electrolytic cell. Um, so, but the lattice one, instead of decanting and leaving the heavy stuff in and then screening the resin beads to get the rest of it, pretty much just did just put it all on the screen, jigged it to get everything off of the resin beads, and that was it because it was so fine. What could be the cause? My assumption, Sam, is that the elution rate, the stripping rate of the uh, resin beads is dramatically reduced, so that the concentration of gold in solution is dramatically reduced, so that as it flows over the cathode, it isn't able to form those more massive deposits. That's my assumption. Um, it's far from a proven thing. I say I can observe a phenomenon, and I'm inferring that the reason that phenomenon is occurring is that because the thiourea is less. Um, I couldn't add thiourea to the solution. Um, so see if I could change that effect. Although by the time I get back to the lab in a couple of weeks, I will have some thiourea, and that's one of the things that I'd like to do. Another thing is in at least one of uh, uh, Lauren's uh, instructional documents and stuff, that he's got a number of things he's collected over years, but in one of them, they suggested that you can replace the thiourea with urea um, and still dissolve gold from rock. I don't know if that's true. I know when I was looking up, urea and sulfuric acid, apparently it's a pretty energetic reaction. So I'll be careful testing it, but it would be nice to know whether or not the urea without the thio part will work. Because it's a lot harder to find thiourea than urea. So we shall see what we shall see. Um, but one thing I can do is when I get back, I can take the exact same solution that I've currently got. If you add some acid, it just might rock. You know, um, that's a good question. But when we get back in the lab, I can take that same solution, add some thiourea to it, and see what happens.
Add some regular urea.
Well, either one. Say right now, I'm not sure which test I want to do first, but we can add some thiourea, see how that changes the deposition of the gold on um, the cathode. Yeah, I don't think it's going to make thiourea. And depending upon the reference, some say that um, the active complex is a gold thiourea complex, where it's got the whole thiourea molecule as an ion uh, bound up against the gold.
Whatever it is,
Others
that's really weird.
Others indicate that it's an intermediate substance that is the active ingredient. Whether that creates a thiourea complex or not, I think. See, thiocarbamide is another name for thiourea, but there's something like, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's a coordination complex or an ion, you know? Yeah, Sam, the problem is you can get into real ownership disputes that way. But anyhow, um, so I say we got some other things we can try while we're continuing to strip stuff. It was interesting that we could observe something visual that is probably an indicator of the amount of thiourea in solution. So we can, and say we can see by looking at the particle size. Oh, we need to add some more thiourea. Something to that effect. That's nice. I still haven't worked too hard on that um, titration, uh, Chris, that you sent me. Well, if you got enough of them and added some acid, who knows? I'm not talking about you at all, Tom. Uh, but anyhow, so I say so we got that interesting little thing. I was talking to the claim owner today, and he's not terribly interested at the moment of doing more research into the reactivation of the resin since we have plenty on hand. So, let's see. Okay, Sin, thank you. And probably aside from, we're looking at, while I'm laid up, we'll see about designing a portable stripping circuit that basically would fit in like a tote, and then you could assemble the parts real easily and have a functional stripping circuit that would work well. The one thing that's kind of critical to that I haven't looked for yet um, is a hot water rated filter housing. Don't know how hard that's going to be to find, or whether it's that critical or not, since the pressures are very low. So even a standard filter housing may be able to handle the temperatures involved without a problem. But it'd be nice to have something that's specifically designed to handle water up to 90 degrees C or something like that. We shall see. Um, I'm keeping it less than 70 degrees, John. Um, the specs call for 55 degrees centigrade. Um, I don't have good solid data, but I'm thinking that if I get it a little hotter than the 55, that it seems to work a little better. But I don't think I'd want to go over 70. We have found a few little teeny chunks of gold, uh, but not enough to make a difference, Sam. Um, the the situation is a little unclear because the day that we were tearing everything down and putting it away for winter was horribly windy, and so when we dropped the um, conical bottom tank on its side, what I would have liked to have done was crawled in there and get the uh, stuff on the bottom that is kind of trapped and never comes out of the tank due to the fitting being a little elevated over the bottom. And I haven't really noticed that. A lot of people have said so, Dave. I haven't had much experience with that. But um, so that was my plan, was to actually crawl into the tank and collect the debris and then pan it. unfortunately, when that gust of wind uh, injured Eva, uh, everything else pretty much went out the window. Yeah. Yeah, Rock, I've also heard it pans differently too. Like the viscosity of the water changes significantly. Um, Say, I'm not sure about that, but I know when I was in Middle Fork of the Boise that summer, toward the end of the summer when it was getting cold, um, some of the guys who were working there said, "Yeah, you want to pan with hot water, not with the cold. Even if you can do it physically, it doesn't bother your hands that much. You really want uh, the hot water to do your panning when it's a tricky panning job. I haven't done enough, controlled testing to have any idea how well that works. But anyhow, so for all I know, we've got significant amount of um gold chunks kind of stuck in that conical bottom tank, but I had no way of checking that under the circumstances. It was planned, but between the weather and Eva's injury, it's like no, I'll get the ambulance, get her to the hospital, and get everything just minimally secured. Something that okay, nothing's going to get damaged here. Get in the truck and follow the ambulance. So, as I say, I was planning on testing that. Huh. Interesting, Rock. I will say this: I just recently encountered my first freezing fog, which was quite unpleasant when trying to drive through it because I guess the water in the fog is super cooled, so when it hits your windshield, it instantly freezes. But it just glazed the windshield, and you couldn't see through it. I think it has to do with viscosity and surface tension and things like that, Sam. I'm not sure if it is any kind of like a vibratory situation, but I think it has to do with the viscosity. That's what I was told. Again, I haven't tried it, but anyhow, that's another thing for this spring when things warm up a little bit. Crawl in there and check that out. Hey, Asakura, and so anyhow, one more thing needs to be done, and we we need to focus this season. It looks like primarily on finding plenty of decent grade ore. Okay, and I don't have a huge amount of confidence in Montana B for that right now. I would think we would be in better grades right now. They should have gone up according to the preliminary channel sampling, and they haven't. So I don't know. Say I'm a bit disappointed with our grades. So
Well, if gold continues to go up,
yeah, well, if gold continues to go up and everything else continues to go up, you still need better grades. Uh, but anyhow, so we will see once the snow melts enough for us to re-engage in uh, preliminary exploration activities. We'll see whether or not we start hauling stuff from Montana B or check out a few other things first. Depends on a lot of factors, but not the least of which is things like, for example, Eva's condition. Um, if she's getting better, but is not ready to sling buckets, but it looks like she will in a couple weeks, then we can, you know, and the snow melts quickly up there at top of the hill. Then we might focus on getting up there and um, you know doing some exploration first. And So, yeah, like everything else, we're playing it by ear, you know. But that's going to be a focus, is finding uh, some good grade that we can move some tons fairly easily. uh, yeah, I agree, Rock. I say, yeah, John, I can understand that. Question on the mine and other sites: is there any tailings piles you can exploit? Um, in the case of Montana B, the waste dumps um, that are still there are of only modest grade. It's easy to move some tons. Okay. So that um, is a reasonable possibility for a little bit. But um, in terms of large tonnage, um, it seems unlikely that it's going to have the grade we're really looking for. But we can certainly move a lot of it easier. Uh, and yeah, I need to do the meeting thing, etc. That would be cool, Sam. Um, but anyhow, it doesn't look that exciting. On the other hand, there's a number of other possibilities, and we also have Jeff Kablock has a number of properties that he might have some stuff that would be suitable for that. We're not irretrievably wedded to trying to make Montana B work. If we find something that will work better, easier, bingo, you know. I understand, Rock. Um, but anyhow, um, the always in motion is the future, to quote Yoda. So we shall, see what we shall see. But I know, for example, there's lots and lots of dumps around this area that have gold in them, and some of them maybe some pretty good gold. We'll just have to see. And um, say we shall see with Eva's condition too. That creates a bit of a question mark. I'm going to have to do some work on that truck to get it up to reliable working condition. Not sure what I'm going to do on the engine. It needs at least, it's either got a head gasket issue or a cracked head. Not sure which, but we're going to, either tear into that or replace the engine. We'll have to see. And yep. I've seen dumps down there in Mexico where the ore was apparently, third of an ounce a ton or better. The gravity concentration dumps were running about a tenth of an ounce, and the cyanide tailings dumps were, a 3/100ths or something like that. When it's already crushed and everything, you don't have to have nearly as much grade if you've got tonnage and you can process it. No water in the oil, Paul, although just a little bit of condensation underneath the filler cap. And no, I haven't got to the compression test yet. That was a Chevy 400 small block. Um, Again, it's something a little bit later. We need to see if we can't get us a secondary vehicle to travel around on. and to spend a few days on it. On the other hand, um, let's say my stepson or son-in-law may be over here late spring, and he may be bringing an engine. So I don't know. I keep putting about a half a container of bars leaks in it every week or two whenever it starts steaming good. And that seems to be under control for now. I'm going to have to pull that radiator and have it rotted out. I'm sure with all the stop leak I've put in there. Um, but in these temperatures, it doesn't matter. Um, by the way, if you're going to keep some bars leaks with you to use in cold temperatures, it's best to dump half of the container of bars leaks out and replace that with antifreeze and shake it up before putting it in your truck. Otherwise, when you need it, nothing happens. Um, Sam, the taxes on gold you produce yourself would basically be like income taxes. So it would vary depending upon your tax bracket and things like that. However, if you're producing it yourself, you don't pay taxes on it until you sell it. So let's suppose you had a mine that was making 100 ounces per week, and um, rock makes a pile by being built up over time. It's a flat topped pile, but yeah, I've seen tailings piles that were pretty big, but it doesn't look anything like a dump. But anyhow, Sam, the if you need to sell 50 ounces per week to um, pay your bills, it's perfectly legal to keep that other 50 ounces a week to yourself, and you don't pay any taxes on it at that point. Only when you sell it to somebody else or trade it for something of value. For example, if you were going to buy a piece of equipment from somebody and you gave them 100 ounces in exchange for that equipment, well, now you have transferred it, and now it is a taxable transaction. You've now received something of value in exchange for it, and it's taxable. The reason they do it that way is because what's the taxable value if you haven't sold it? If you're holding it in your pocket, is it at the moment that you created it? And which gold was that? Was that the gold from today or tomorrow? So that's what they've done. In order to tax it, the value is set at the time it is sold or transferred. So you can, on a small scale, you can avoid a lot of immediate taxes that way. Bartering is still taxable, Paul, legally in the United States. Yeah, they've um, that's one of those things that. Um, just a second here. Yeah, bartering nowadays in the United States of America. For a while there, it used to be you could get away with a lot of stuff. For example, in the uh, early 80s, for example, you would have say, an executive, or say you had your own small company. Okay. So you would pay yourself $50,000 a year in salary, but then the company would provide you with a house and a car and blah, blah, blah. And by doing it that way, you could avoid a lot of taxes. But then they said, well, that's something of value. You're getting a compensation. And sometimes that works exactly that way, Sam. But anyhow, uh, the government changed those rules because so many people were avoiding paying taxes in that way. I mean, you could get the use of a really nice house and a really nice car and all this other stuff for absolutely free and pay no taxes. Yeah, government didn't like that. Now they're getting so bad that they are talking of if you just do what do they call that, Uber or something like that, where you make a casual income on the side, that they're going to tax that, and they're going to put out, what was it, 82,000 new IRS agents to try and track down all these IRS scofflaws or something like that. Oh yeah, yeah. The government doesn't like not getting its taxes. If you pay your lease with gold dust, now if the lease is for the mine property, then that's not tax. That's an expense. If, on the other hand, you're paying the lease for your house, your personal residence with the gold dust, then it would be a taxable income. Okay. Ah, yes, Rock. Should be a deduction as a corporate expense. Yeah. But then they say the companies were using it to get around the compensation thing. And I mean, the company could write it off as an expense, and the um, executive didn't have to declare it on his taxes. So that money was not being taxed, and the government didn't like that, you know? Oh, they just print more money, Shaggy. And that's why the price, well, one of the big reasons prices are going up is the printing of money. The other big reason the prices are going up is energy policy has reduced the supply of energy, which causes the price to go up, which means that by definition, everything that uses energy, i.e., everything, is going up in price. Yep. So, I say it's government always seems to come up with a bad solution to a simple problem. You know,
Government is the problem, period.
If you pay for employee housing, you can deduct it. Yes, the company can deduct it, but the employees would have to declare it as income. Just like they were being paid in dollars. Yeah, Rock. Glorious leader. I like that. That sounds amazingly appropriate.
For who? Socks or Captain
Socks.
Dementia?
Socks.
Yeah.
Hey, Patrick, how's it going?
Castro the Great.
Yes, great leader. Who is, oh, and Rock and Bull, fearless leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. And quite a variety, Rock, too. Absolutely. Man. I I think we're racing you to the bottom, Rock. The problem is we're a lot bigger. We're like a big boat that goes down and sucks people down with them. Um, I'm. I'll make a little prediction here. I think it's far enough away from the forbidden topics. The fact that the press is now going after Biden on the you know um, classified document thing indicates to me they're now ready to replace Biden, because it's been 2 years, and in 5 days from now, it'll be 2 years and one day he was in office. So whoever replaces him can be there for 2 terms plus 2 years. So, no, Lars, you can't pay your taxes. However, if you trade them for something else, then you have to pay taxes on your chickens. That would be um, depending a lot on circumstances. Hey, Alex, how's it going? Uh, Generally, if you're dealing with like a big corporation, they're only going to pay a very small percentage. If you're dealing with individuals, it's going to be anywhere from about 5% to a third, if it was really rich and easy to do. But it can vary enormously. It can be from a fractional percent for something big that's not super rich, but it's going to be profitable, on a big scale. Um, but it's just going to vary. One thing you need to be aware of is, first of all, if there's an end date and there's no automatic renewals or whatever, you can be sure if the guy thinks he can make a better deal some other way, he's probably not going to renew it. And if you hit something rich, or if the grade drops or whatever, that better be figured into your calculations, or you're going to wind up in a very uncomfortable situation. So a lot of times it's on a sliding scale too, where it's this percentage up to this amount, and then it goes to a higher percentage above that, because that way everyone's kind of protected. They're comfortable no matter what's happening. But if you, for example, had an ore body, well, let's say it was placer, okay, and you were figuring you had $40 a ton, which is pretty good placer if you got a lot of tonnage there. And you figured you were going to make 2,000 ounces. Well, if suddenly you hit some really rich stuff and now you've got 20,000 ounces, the claim owner's not going to be real happy, And so you'll have a certain thing, you play this much percentage up to here, and then you'll pay a higher percentage up to here, and like that. Yeah, John, sounds about right to me. Exactly. And I say that the way the gold rush played it was like, well, this is really, this, and it's like, no, that's pretty standard. And I like Tony's answer to Parker. Sucks to be you. Why should he renegotiate? Unless Parker is going to just walk away, why should Tony renegotiate? Yeah, if you're dealing with a big project, yeah, 2% is pretty high. I say usually fractional percent is more the rule. I agree, Sam. I think as the history books about the recent couple of years are written, it'll be more obvious than ever. But that's a subject we're not allowed to talk about in our free country with freedom of speech. Think about it, folks. Is it a free country anymore? But anyhow, so I say it's an interesting situation all around. Oh, I haven't seen Richard show up. Tricky Dicky. Yeah, it's pretty funny, Asakura. You know. I don't think it's banned yet, Alex, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I say it's becoming a theater of the absurd, and we'll see how long it can continue to hold together. Chris, they don't have ideas; they have instructions. But you say we did find a way that effectively eludes. By the way, in terms of how much elution, according to EVA's fire assays, we're getting over 90% elution from the, yeah, I know, Sakura, from the resin in terms of the residual was what, about 7%?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so when we did the mass balance, etc., according to her previous fire assays of that resin, we're doing real good overall. I agree, Alex.
But the resin is now very difficult to smelt.
Yeah. Although Eva has complained vigorously that it does something to the resin that makes it very active in the crucible. Now, that pretty much gets neutralized if you ash first, right?
If you ash enough, but even the ash is more active than it was.
Even the ash is more active, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so
I had a runaway crucible situation. I am not a happy camper.
yeah. She's very happy we have these replaceable kiln bottoms now.
I was always happy about those.
Yeah. Alex says you better go catch it. Your runaway crucible.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Anyhow,
I am studiously ignoring that comment.
The goddess does not take notice of this. Chris says you're kind of you're making kind of black powder in the charge. Potassium nitrate, carbon, and sulfur. I don't know about that because are we making potassium nitrate with the thiourea? It's got the amine group. Huh. It's true. Hey, can you ask Eva a question? Yep. I'm confused after watching your last published video. You betcha I can ask her a question. There is no organic chemistry channel, huh? Okay.
Oh, that's lovely.
As somebody said about algebra, okay, let's take numbers and mix them with letters. What could go wrong?
So what's the question?
I don't know yet. Yeah, go ahead and ask the question, Rock. Eva will be happy to answer.
As far as I can answer, you probably know more than I do, Rock.
We showed parted beads that looked like cupel beads. Okay. Do you want to answer this or do you want me to, little one?
Since I lack annealing cups, and well, let me put it this way, I don't lack annealing cups. I have a very small supply of crucibles and cupels and annealing cups that are only for ore assays. So I won't use them for anything else. Okay.
Okay. I think what.
Yes, I do, Rock. When I am actually doing a cupellation, when I'm going to be doing a cupellation with an ink quart, my ink quart is a minimum of 3 times the expected gold. It's usually 5 times the expected gold. I feel better that way. Now, he had me making the doré beads, which we did not do an ink quart on, so those are still impure, so to speak. But once I've got my bead ready for parting, I go part the bead, and then because I don't have annealing cups that are purpose dedicated to anything but ore assays, my parting debris gets wrapped up in a lead foil packet and put on a cupel again. That's the best way to get them together. And yes, Chris, that's exactly it. Asakura, a negative and a negative does indeed make a positive if we're talking math. If we're talking some math, okay? If we're talking multiplication. But anyway, yeah. I personally, Sakura, don't get imaginary numbers. Complex numbers are not in my worldview. Okay. Yes, I do. Indeed, Rock Butcher. It goes in the crucible during the smelt because that has been working, and that's what the book said to do. The book said that everything should be close to the same size particle wise. It's supposed to be mixed in quarted, and thoroughly mixed and then smelted. So I follow the book since the book has been right so far. The book never encountered resin beads, and it never encountered these resin beads that, thanks to whatever the heck he does to them, are now becoming practically explosive. And I mean that seriously, folks.
Well, the amine group is a nitrate, basically, or a nitrogen group.
Yes, the bead that comes out, the bead that comes out after cupellation of the lead button is inquarted, then it gets parted, and then it goes.
Okay. Just to say, I've got a diagram now, little one.
That makes sense, Alex, because it pretty much was freaking explosive. I am very, very annoyed at this because I already am dealing with a furnace that is not capable of doing what I need to do and isn't big enough. But now it looks like to get these things to behave well enough to actually get material out of them rather than on the floor of my dang furnace, I'm going to have to cut my sample size significantly again. It's like not good. The goddess is displeased by this,
Okay, let me explain something, Rock. I'm not sure if you got it. We've got two different types of beads we're making. And in that last video, you saw two different giant beads being made. That's because they came from two different sources. When we're getting these stripping cons, there's so much of them that if we were to inquart silver and then part, it would add a lot of time and effort to the process. Okay. And no, she usually doesn't. They seem to be parting reasonably well without being hammered, Rock.
Yeah, they part fine without being hammered if you go between 3 and 5 to 1 ratio.
So anyhow, the stripping cons will be mixed with a litharge flux to make sure we get everything, make a lead button, and then that gets cupelled into a doré bead, we call it. Okay. On the other hand, if she's assaying a resin, she'll put in a litharge flux and she'll add silver at that point for inquartation. That gives a lead button that gets cupelled. Then that cupelled bead, which has plenty of silver in it, then it gets parted, and then we convert that to a gold bead by recupelling with a little bit of lead foil.
Because I don't have enough annealing cups.
In terms of parted, they were flux, they were recupelled from parted gold. Okay.
Agreed.
That way, there's usually a little bit of cleaning that's done during the recupelling process. And yeah, I see what you're saying, Rock, and technically you're correct. Okay. We're distinguishing the gold itself that we recover as the doré beads we know are relatively impure. It turns out about 86, 87% gold. We knew that, and we just don't want to take the time to refine them because the claim owner doesn't want to pay us to do it. Okay. And the resin, because we're going for precise numbers, we're inquarting, and then once that is cupelled, then we part, then add, and we just take that and wrap it up in some gold and turn it into a bead. Now, the difference in weight between the parting debris and the actual gold bead we get is usually pretty small, like what, less than 1%?
Yeah.
Okay. It's usually within 1% or so. Now we could.
Less than 0.5%, actually.
Okay. we could just take the parting debris and save it. I mean, we're not doing this just to get a number. We're doing it to recover the gold too. So by re-cupelling it, we wind up with a bead that's a lot easier to keep track of, and you're not going to lose a portion of it to, a container or something like that. And one thing that uh, these stripping cons I'm talking about here, we need to dry those. And when I'm drying them in a beaker, I can't get that beaker super clean easily. So what I've done, I'm just using the same beaker, and so that the slight residual that's in there stays about the same from one to another to another.
I do the same thing with my nitric acid.
My parting acid. And so that allows us to not continually keep losing stuff. And also, in the long run, if we can continue to just replenish and reuse the stripping solution, then we're not going to be throwing away any gold. Whether it be precipitated gold that's kind of fine, or whether it's dissolved gold. Either way, we're still reusing it. Can you add aluminum to this? I know you can add it to increase the energy of ANFO. Correct, Rock. And I say we have to do that. Now, we had, we're generating at the current, and this is another thing that's interesting, at the circumstances we're operating at the mill, using our spot test to determine when the gold stops really where the resin stops recovering the gold out of solution, it appears that at those concentrations of solution, gold in solution, that appears to be at about 1.5% of the wet resin weight. Okay. Or the way we do it, 0.4 grams per 25 grams of resin. Okay. And so we are getting very consistent, 0.4 plus or minus there. So that appears to be kind of what the max loading is, max efficient loading
that we know of
for the concentrations we're running. Now, mind you, the concentrations we were running were relatively modest. They were only running like, 6 to 8 parts per million this year because the ore grades were so low. We get higher ore grades. The resins we got last year were running about twice that. Okay. And so we go ahead and have certain limits here now. We know what we're going to be dealing with. If we're stripping 400 grams of resin at 0.4 grams per 25 grams, so we take 400 divided by 4, 400.
400 divided by 4 is 100.
Let's see. Divided by 25. That's where I'm screwing up there. 16. So we got basically 16 standard sized assay batches. Okay. And times 0.4. So each batch I'm running through that big flask should have in the neighborhood of 6.5 grams of gold. If we were to add the silver to that to, in-quart it properly, we're looking at almost half an ounce of silver that we then have to pull back out. So that's why we've just been.
It would be about an ounce of silver if we had 6 grams of gold. I would it works better on larger amounts of gold if you go for 5-to-1 silver to gold
Okay.
than it does.
Even worse than that. So anyhow, it's just so much that we decided it's simpler to just keep the beads separate. And then when we melt them into larger beads and turn them over to the claim owner, he'll have doré beads and parted beads, we call them. You know, it's stuff, the gold that's been through a parting process and therefore should be 99% or better.
Personally, I'd like to do all of it.
Don't know, Horton. Little one, I think the answer is no. Can you inquart with copper?
No, you do not inquart with copper.
Yeah.
You
The
inquart
copper
with silver.
the copper increases losses during the cupelling process, I believe. Chris says you can. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's something else. Yeah. Aluminum will react very actively. Rock says yes, you can. Okay.
Well, I wouldn't want to try it.
Yeah, I think you get higher losses that way. What's the other one they use? Bismuth. Bismuth.
Well, bismuth is used in place of litharge, actually.
In place of litharge or in place of lead?
In place of lead.
Lead. Okay.
But yeah, the book was adamant you use silver to inquart because it has the highest protective influence on gold.
Silver works better. I think you can with copper. What are the losses with copper, little one?
I have not tried it, and the book did not even really address it. It just said that it was not advised.
Okay, according to Eva, the book
silver.
didn't give a number, but it says it's not advised. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, Rock. You can do it both ways. Silver just works a lot better. And you can recover the silver again by precipitating, cementing with copper.
Or any one of several others.
Chris says it'll also, when you try and do the parting, it'll get really active if you're using copper. Yep. What we did, Horton, is we went down to the local coin shop and bought a couple of silver rounds and then just dissolved them in dilute nitric. And then we cemented it on copper. And the reason we did that is because we want fine particles of copper.
Fine particles of silver, not copper.
Sorry, you're correct. Fine particles of silver. And so by doing the dissolving and then cementing, that's exactly what we get is fine particles of silver. And then after you've used them once, well, every time you recover them, that's exactly the form you make it in. So there's a number of ways of going about these things. And so some things are simpler, some things are more efficient, some things require more capital investment, but allow a lower cost per unit. For example, you can recover the way Eva's doing it, we're using nitric acid to dissolve the silver. You can recover the nitric acid, the silver, and the copper if you do it the way. So here's basically how it works. You start out with silver nitrate in solution. You add the copper, and you wind up with silver and copper nitrate. And I am not balancing this. I don't know how many NO3s and stuff. So that's copper nitrate. That may not be copper nitrate because there may be, like NO3 2 or something. But anyhow, so you've now got your silver back. Okay. You take your copper nitrate plus sulfuric acid, and that gives you copper sulfate plus nitric acid. Okay? Then you distill this. Then you wind up with nitric acid. You've now recovered that. Now, if you take your copper sulfate and electroplate, you get copper metal plus sulfuric acid, which you can then distill.
So you get your sulfuric acid back and your copper back.
So basically, you've recovered everything you started with, and this is where your last step is with electricity. You're putting electricity in to make everything happen. No silver chloride. You can do that too. Oh yeah, that's a different thing you can do. We're not talking about, you can get the silver out by a number of different ways.
You can
Okay.
You can use sodium chloride to make silver chloride, but then you end up with sodium nitrate, which can be turned back into nitric acid, but it's not nearly as efficient.
I'm merely pointing out that you can basically recover all your chemicals that you input to this thing as long as you use electricity at the end there. But yeah, you can get the silver out of the silver nitrate solution. You can precipitate it as a chloride. You can precipitate it as metallic silver. You can electroplate it out of solution and get nice silver crystals. See, we don't want big silver crystals for inquartation into the assay product. We want finely divided silver, which is why the cementation works well. If you use the silver chloride directly into a flux as an inquart, you have higher losses, And so this way we're dealing with, just it looks almost like powder, but it's actually real fine flakes of silver.
The book is adamant one should not have chloride or chlorines around your assays if you're assaying for gold and silver.
Yeah, the chlorides can also cause problems, and you can create volatile gold chloride, and it just vaporizes, which is not good. So, let's say this. I was just pointing out you can do this. But, how much does nitric acid cost to buy?
Now?
How available is it? That depends. Do you want to go through this effort to get it or not? Also, same thing with sulfuric acid and copper. How much do those things cost? And that's, dependent upon your situation. If you were in a third world country where getting these chemicals could be very difficult, then it might make perfect sense to use this process here to recover everything. Same thing with, availability. In the future, availability maybe kind of sucks. And you wind up going, okay, we're going to have to, recover because we just can't buy it, So but it can be done. This electricity, this electrolytic step here will allow you to basically finish the recovery process of everything.
Nitric acid is already getting expensive.
How much is nitric right now, little one?
I have seen quotes for up to $90 a freaking liter for reagent grade nitric. For real.
How about tech grade? Nope.
Tech grade, I saw one quote for $130 for a gallon.
$130 a gallon. Again, it's the $130 a gallon for nitric acid, in my opinion, is not that terribly expensive, because by the time we do that, we're probably spending a lot more than $130 a gallon to get it. And oh no, you're doing great, Sam. I'm glad to have you here today. You're livening things up a bit. We just love it. But I just want to point out that it's possible, because in the future, who knows, you might not be able to get nitric acid. So this might make a lot more sense.
Well, and for the hobbyist doing e-waste scrapping, it makes tremendous sense to recycle all your chemicals.
Chris says you can just stockpile the dried copper nitrate. Yeah, that's not necessarily a bad idea. We might want to start doing that, little one.
Yeah.
Right now we've got the liquid silver nitrate sitting in a bottle, but there's no reason we couldn't. How stable is the copper nitrate, Chris? Does it spontaneously combust with a little bit of heat or anything like that, or is it pretty, Rock, you've told it before. Pretty stable. Okay. Yeah. So we could just dry that and stockpile it.
I'm all in favor.
Yeah. No problem. Schmaltz. Not the Schwartz be with you. The Schmaltz be with you, I believe. Correct, little one? Lord Helmet, may the Schmaltz be with you?
No, it's may the Schwartz if you're Lord Helmet. It's may the Schmaltz be with you if you're a Jewish housewife.
Okay. So anyhow, I just wanted to point that out. It is possible. And that was Street Tips that was doing that, wasn't it?
Street Tips did not go the last step. Street Tips tweaks me out, because as much as I love the dude, but when he gets his copper nitrate, he cements it out with iron, and then he gets rid of the chemicals. And it's like, excuse me?
Well, I thought the
other dude is a video Chris sent us, and I don't remember his name.
Okay. It was somebody Chris sent us. But anyhow.
Because I want to recover my chemicals, because that's what people do.
Nerd rage, Chris says. Nerd rage. But anyhow, I say it's amazing what you can do. And there's the link. Eva is on point. So as I say, it would depend upon your situation, but I like the idea of, we can store the copper nitrate so that in future, if we need to come up with an alternative thing, then we can do that.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that I want to develop the best practice process for it is because I have a lot of e-waste people that want to learn how to safely do chemical recovery.
Yeah.
And if you're working with e-waste, you need to keep those tight cost controls in place.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I was thinking of, I'm thinking of putting together basically a stripping circuit. Alex, done it. It was real interesting, because as you fill the trash bag, as the plastic peels apart, you will get a static spark, which will prematurely initiate the oxyacetylene mixture. Trust me. And so what you have to do is partially fill the bag. I think the oxygen is the major volume, but you want to partially fill it with the bag with that first, then put in your oxygen and then do it. But it's one of those things that it can get real tricky, and make sure you're far enough away and you're wearing ear protection. So
I'm planning to do one of those testosterone influenced things.
Probably.
It was nice knowing
you. Nice outlier. Yeah. I presume it shreds the styrofoam cups. In my case, we had the trash bag about 1/4 full, and it shredded the plastic bag. you know. Absolutely, Lars. I would say static electricity from the bag will cause it to detonate. You know, atomizes the styrofoam. I believe it. It also, if you're holding the bag onto the tip of an oxyacetylene torch, it will also tend to burn your fingers. You know, um, I will tell you this though: the explosive power is sufficient to drive small particles through your jeans into your legs, give you a rash. Kodak says that Street Tips is a hobbyist is making a living with his hobby. Nerd Rage is a chemist. Different perspectives.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, my perspective is cost containment. He can say what he wants, but I want to see our all-in sustaining cost numbers drop.
Then you have to eliminate something called labor cost, because one day doing that just bought you a gallon of reagent grade nitric acid.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Unless your time is free, it gets real expensive. Okay, and so that's the situation as far as I'm concerned. I put that in there. It's too much hassle. Now we did get a condenser because what was it, $35 or something on American Science Circle?
It was 20. It was under 30.
Yeah,
it was just under 30.
Around $30 for a condenser, big one, you know, with the spiral tube, water jacket, ground glass ends, which you could use corks in too, and comes with a stand and a burette clamp for $30. Yeah, that wasn't the O2, huh? Yeah, I believe it. By the way, Lauren has a shop where he's taken an overhead spool and has, I don't know how many feet of oxyacetylene line on it. You know, the two tube thing. I think it's 100-foot spool. So I mean, he can get anywhere in his shop just by pulling out the hose and going over there. That was cool. So, but yeah, it's fun stuff. But Alex, yeah, filling a plastic bag with oxyacetylene is rife with premature detonation risk. Trust me. Correct. Yeah, I know it's not Gordon. Yeah, anyhow, Mr. Old. Well, the reason, Alex, is it's unstable at pressure. At the kind, that's why you're on your acetylene gauge. It goes up to 15, and then it has a red zone. That's because acetylene gas at over 15 psi can spontaneously decompose with the release of large amounts of energy. Depends on how much you pay her, Alex. You know, if it's a professional arrangement, it's just higher, more efficient. Anyone want to hear a good joke? It's a little bit racy, not too bad though. Yeah, Alex, that would be a you problem. Yeah. Uh, Anyhow, yeah, that acetylene is just so energetic that it's got some very specific. Okay, Paul, what's the difference between, let me get this right, a girlfriend, a prostitute, and a wife? Okay. Anyone want to try and get an answer in here yet, or are you just waiting for the punchline? Okay. I'll give just a minute to see if anyone's got a punchline. Let's see. A girlfriend says, Are you finished already? A prostitute says, aren't you done yet? And a wife goes, honey, don't you think it's about time to repaint the ceiling? Uh, either that or you just don't pay for it the next time. Exactly, Paul. But anyhow, so Rock Butcher gave 4 laughing to you cries. That's pretty good. Lawyer and a catfish. You know the joke? What's the difference between a lawyer and a catfish, little one? I don't.
You can eat a catfish without getting food poisoning.
No. One is a scum-sucking bottom dweller and the other is a fish.
Yeah. Well, that too.
As I was going to say and got distracted here, the stripping circuit that we're dealing with, if you were to perhaps replace the resin with a electronics parts and then electroplate the gold out of the stripping solution, you might could use it pretty well for electronics recycling too. I do, Sam, it didn't help. Not sure, Rock. That sounds pretty good, Chris. Let's see if that's the joke. Pretty close, Jeff. Yep. Rock Butcher. The dead skunk has skid marks in front of it. So anyhow, so let's say our stripping circuit, we might also make it as an electronics precious metals recovery thing. If we had, I'll say Eco Goldex in a solution that was conductive enough, you should be able to, because it's the same thing. You're circulating a solution through a container of things, and then taking that same solution and running it through an electroplating cell to plate the stuff out of it. And you got it, Lars, but it was slow. Say it's the computer. So that's another possibility too. We're looking at the possibility of making these stripping circuits to where they will fit into a good heavy duty tote, and all the parts are in there, and then you get it and follow the instructions, put it together, and voila, you've got yourself a stripping circuit or possibly a recovery circuit for getting precious metals off of electronics. We'll work on it while I'm recovering. That's when I can do my research on parts and things like that. For example, if we were to use the resin cartridges, we'd need enough solution flow to move the resin around a little bit. And we got to see what the velocity is on that. I'm thinking probably 1 to 2 gallons per minute. Let me try Amazon here. Come on, you stupid thing. Peristaltic pump 1 GPM. Let's see what we got here. That's a pretty good looking one. Multiple channel one. Low flow peristaltic pump. Wow, that's cheap. Goodness. $10. High flow peristaltic pump. 40 to 160 mils per minute. No, I wouldn't call that high flow. Let's see. What's the flow rate with stepper motor, whatever that means? Come on, give me a flow rate. Size, color, style, batteries included. No. Doesn't give a flow rate. See, that's what I mean. I'm going to have to research all this. And to get a peristaltic pump at 1 gallon per minute is probably going to be kind of tricky and expensive. Yeah, it was a DC anyhow. Yeah, exactly, Chris. For a dosing pump, that's high flow. But another thing I need to test is, good one, Rock, is how fast does the stripping go depending upon the flow rate that I'm putting through it. For example, clearly the lower the concentration in the solution around the resin beads, the faster the elution should occur. And that will, help there. But then in the electroplating cell, how badly does that decrease the efficiency of the electroplating cell? If we could, if we got an efficient enough electroplating cell, then we could, uh, run a pretty high flow rate. We'll see. Jeff, that is not a weird thought. It's perfectly possible. The thiourea in an acid solution has been used for dissolving gold from ores and concentrates. However, as Chris brings up, in our ore, we have a basic ore. So to try and get it down to a pH of 2 or 3, we'd have to use enormous amounts of acid. So we would want a basic solution. Cyanide would probably work fine. It's just not legal around here. If, on the other hand, you're got sulfide ores or something like that, then your thiourea may work pretty good. Does the resin processing work on sulfide ores? As far as I know, if you are able to process the sulfide ores with the Eco Goldex, then the other stuff should work. The problem with sulfide ores, they tend to be acidic ores, and you may have much more lime consumption. The other potential problem with sulfide ores, if the gold is in the sulfide, as opposed to on the sulfide or next to the sulfide, it can be a real trouble getting good solution contact with the gold particles. So these are the sort of things. This is part of the initial metallurgical workup you do on your ore. When you first get an ore sample, you need to get a good idea. First of all, what's the size of the gold particles? And this is pretty easy to do because you just crush it finely and then pan it. If you can't pan any of the gold out using the techniques I use, it's real fine gold and you're pretty much straight to leaching. Okay. If you can pan all of the gold out, then you can go with a precision gravity technique, such as a table, something like that. And you could also probably go with a flotation technique. Depends on what else is in there that might be a problem. But with your gravity technique, you're also going to wind up with a concentrate. Then you're going to have to do something to turn that into pure gold. if it's big enough particles, you should be able to concentrate to the point where you can just flux it. You know? Yeah, particle size distribution. Exactly. What size are the gold particles? This is what caused us to do the leaching right away. Is when we started trying to do gravity concentrations, we just couldn't concentrate it at all. Well, we could a little bit. We get about 20% of the gold with a good quality gravity concentration. So then we spent the money to do a more complex analysis and found out, yeah, that gold is really, really, really small. So at that point, it was pretty much we're going to have to leach it. You know, if we couldn't concentrate something like the gold is generally associated with the iron particles, but we couldn't come up with a real good way of just concentrating the iron particles, real simple, like is it with only the magnetic iron particles? And then when we did some preliminary leaching tests, it just, gangbusters. So it's like, okay, at that point, it's clear that leaching is going to be the best way to get the gold out of the rock. Then we got to get the gold out of solution and then out of the resin into our hands. Yeah.
And.
You're correct, Rock. If it's so fine and so evenly distributed that it's encapsulated, yeah, you're pretty much screwed. Yeah, exactly, Sam. The devil is in the details, and this is where a huge number of novices make their mistake. They will research it, and somebody is, say, using a table to recover the gold from their hard rock. So right away they figure, well, I can use a table to recover the gold from my hard rock. Then they go out and they buy a jaw crusher and a pulverizer and a table, and they put their rock on it and it doesn't work. And they've spent a lot of money for nothing. So you want to do your testing on a small scale so that when you find out what works, it didn't cost you a lot of money to get to that point. Okay. You didn't buy a lot of equipment that's not going to work on a production size. Okay. So that's real important. Work on small scale first. I don't know how many tests we've done on this resin, both in terms of ashing, smelting, and elution, but it's a lot. And
I've done over 300.
Yeah, Eva says she's done 300 smelts.
Over.
But if we were using large quantities in those, we would have run out of resin long before we found a result. Small tests. Now, this stripping circuit, what is small scale? What kind of equipment? Okay, very good question. First thing, you start out with what you call laboratory scale. This is where you're measuring it in grams, anywhere from like 50 to 1,000 grams worth of rock sample. Okay. You can use a mortar and pestle to grind up 100 grams of rock pretty fine. Then you can hand pan it and assay the two things. But the methodologies you use have to work on that scale first before you try scaling up. Yeah, Sam. The question is, how efficient are they? And one thing that you might be able to do, Sam, is if they're using gravity concentrations, their tailings may have plenty of gold that's real easy to leach, because what they're going to be losing will generally be the really fine stuff. And so, say, whatever sample you're doing, anything from my standard size pan sample is about 1 kilogram. Okay. It's about 2 cups of rock pulverized. And then pan it down and see what you get. Then you're typically going to have to do assays too. We're working on getting Eva fully equipped to do rock assays also. And that will be very helpful in determining, like if you hand pan it, then the question is, well, how much is still left in the stuff that you didn't recover, you know? But that's the size you start with. If you find something that seems to work pretty well there, then you go up to what they call pilot scale sort of stuff, hundreds of pounds per hour, and see if it works. For example, if you're going to run a table to do recoveries, you can't put 50 pounds of rock on a table. It just doesn't it doesn't get to equilibrium, steady state operations. To run a table, you need hundreds of pounds. Okay. And so you don't know how well that technique is going to work on that rock just from hand panning, but you do know that it's got possibilities. On our particular roar, Montana B, 80% of the gold didn't even want to settle in a bucket in a minute. It was just floating, So I say it's right there. Well, if it's floating in still water, you're not going to be able to separate it very easily at all. And that's why it was just extremely, extremely small. Once you've got a method that works, or, say if leaching seems to be the way to go, then you have to see what kind of leaching. First thing, regulatory environment.
Whoa.
Are you going to be able to use cyanide? If you are, then you consider it. If you're not, you don't even need to consider it. There's acid thiourea leaches. There's basic thiosulfate leaches, I believe. There's the Eco Goldex, which is a basic leach. And to do that, you would take a sample of your rock, run the test leach solution at the appropriate pH, see how much chemical it takes to adjust the pH to the operating range of the chemical. That's a cost. You need to know what those costs are. Then you leach it, you see what kind of recovery it is. Okay. Oh yeah, we tried that, Sam. Say this stuff, it makes powdered sugar look coarse, literally. Most of your bacteria, your average bacteria is bigger than the gold in our rock, but that's why it dissolves so fast too. Once you've got a solution that will be both legal and practical, in other words, the costs are fairly low, then you got to say, how do I get it out of the solution? Again, there's multiple ways of getting it out of solution. So you test that on a laboratory scale too. Direct electrowinning, cementation, activated carbon, ion exchange resin, all kinds of different ways. With it, in our case, we tried direct electrowinning first because it's the simplest. Okay. The solution was not conductive enough. We could not get the gold out of the solution with direct electrowinning in an efficient manner. Okay, boom. Tried the resin. Found a resin that works real well, real fast. I mean, it's, the first 4 we tested, one just bam, grabbed the gold. So, okay, now we got a way to get it out of solution. Then the question is, how do we get it out of the resin? That's what we've been working on about the last year. And it's been difficult finding this. Once we found it, boom. Yeah, probably, Sam. That's a pretty good America joke too. Very good. But now once we found a solution that would dissolve the gold out of the resin and get it back, then you've got, a simple, generally then at that point, you just electrolytically recover it, which worked out fairly straightforward. We still had to figure out exactly what voltages and stuff, but wasn't too bad. So now we've got a complete system for this ore. If we go up to top of the hill and find good ore, we'll have to redo the whole thing. And don't shortcut any steps, because if you do, there's a good chance you're going to shoot yourself in the foot pretty bad. I'm not talking with a BB gun. I'm talking more like the 44 Magnum to the foot, And so you go through all those same steps, and wherever you run into a problem, then you address the problem. First thing you do, is it gravity concentratable? Quite often, and Sam, this is why I told you to check the tailings. Quite often in hard rock gold, if you can gravity separate gold, you're only going to get so much of it. And quite a lot is going to get past your gravity separation. And that's the stuff that'll leach well. So again, Sam, if where you're at, they're using gravity separation or flotation to get or amalgamation, okay, that's not going to get the really fine stuff. And that really fine stuff can be anywhere from maybe 10% of the gold to 90% of the gold. Okay. So if they're getting half of the gold and they just can't get the other half and are throwing it away, hell, they mined it, they hauled it, they crushed it, and it's just sitting there. Now, all you do is work a deal with them to reprocess it, and you can make a lot of money, So, let's say, if it's what kind of techniques are they using to recover the gold from the rock where you're at, Sam? What are their basic methods? And let's say that another thing is a lot of times they use what's called vat leaching, and that's not too bad, but it will tend to lose the coarse gold. You might be able to, if all they're doing is crushing it and dumping it in the vat, any coarse gold is generally not going to be recovered, especially if they're using cyanide. Okay. The coarser stuff like the 100 mesh plus. So when they empty those vats, run it over a simple sluice box optimized for that. Okay, heap cyanidation leaching, is that for the high grade stuff? Okay, pine oil flotation, that'll work on the mid-size gold. It may not, it'll probably pick up even fairly coarse gold, not nuggets, but fairly coarse gold. Mercury amalgamation, that's going to get the coarse gold and the mid-grade stuff, but not the fine stuff, not the real fine stuff. The cyanidation, on the other hand, will do the opposite. It will get the fine stuff and not the coarse stuff. Is that heap cyanide leaching? What is the ore grade they're using for that? What are they sending to those heaps? Exactly, Rock. And they're building up a huge ore body of almost 1/10 of an ounce to the ton material already crushed and ground, to leach. Okay, you said heap leaching. Are you talking heaps where they pile it up on something? Or are you talking a tank leach where they put it into a hole in the ground? Say if they put it into a hole in the ground, they're going to get pretty good recovery. If they put it up in a pile, not nearly as good. But what is the grade that they're running? And another thing is, at the mine, they're going to likely be hand sorting it and throwing away the low grade. Well, perhaps you can process that low grade on site, or buy the low grade from them if you don't have to haul it too far. Again, anytime somebody else is doing a lot of the work for you, it changes your economics a lot. If you've got a mine where they are mining a vein and hand sorting the best stuff and sending it off to a mill somewhere and then throwing away the low grade stuff, if you just segregate the low grade vein rock from the wall rock, you might have a really nice supply of ore right there. It may only be a tenth of an ounce to the ton, but if they're throwing away 3 tons a day, yep, exactly. The tarps and leaching like that is less efficient. The tanks, that's called vat leaching, that's more efficient. Uh, they get 10 grams per ton. Okay, third of an ounce to the ton. So you'll just have to look at all the different spots in the operations, from the mines to the mills and everything, and see if there's some place where somebody's throwing away some gold for whatever reason. Paul, he's talking about flotation. Pine oil is the flotation reagent. It's the thing that will cause the gold to float on top, and then they bubble air through it, and it's the collector. And it's extremely efficient. That's how they recover a lot of base metals, for example. Lead, copper, stuff like that. They use froth flotation. You can Google it and see some pretty interesting stuff. And as I say, the problem is, and those are chemical, by the way, that Chris is talking about. But the whole thing is every process works well on certain things and doesn't work on other things. So you have to look and see what's going on where, and find the person that's got something that he's not able to make money on, that, so he throws it away. And then if you know a way to make money on it, you can make a deal. There you go. Exactly, Sam. I say look around, and as they find someone. The other thing, Sam, is that there's a lot of dumb people in the world, believe it or not. Even in some places like Zimbabwe, where being dumb will get you killed quick. And so there's people that just insist on doing it their own way when it's not very useful. So that's look for your opportunities. The trick there is be quick to say, no, that's not good enough. No, that's not good enough. No, and that's like, oh yeah, that's good enough. So that's you're in kind of a target rich environment for that there, theoretically. Yeah, I say just look around, find somebody who's throwing away gold because they don't know how to get it. And that's where you make some money. Just make sure you get it. Are contracts respected in Zimbabwe there? Is it something that if you write a contract with someone and they decide they don't want to honor it, they can, screw you over? Or is it something that's pretty easy to enforce down there? Sometimes in those kind of situations, winding up with a partner who's kind of politically connected can come in handy. Yeah, say it depends. In these third world countries, yeah, unless the person is a politician. Okay, well, in that case, then you can you just need to find a spot, make sure you've got an opportunity to do something. And you might, it's not a bad idea to get a contract before you know how to do it. With their aura, okay, you're throwing stuff away. I might be able to help out, but I'm not going to exert myself and figure out how to do it unless I know I can capitalize that once I've done it. So we need an agreement before I go to that effort. Always make sure you do that, because believe me, once you've figured it out, your value goes way down in the equation. So you need to make the deal first before you figure it out. But yeah, if anyone's throwing stuff away in the 2 or 3 grams to the ton, that's potentially quite valuable. Excellent, Sam. I have found that people change their minds if there's no contract in place before the research is done. Oh, yeah. I wish you luck on that, Sam. And you evidently are knowledgeable enough to know how to, watch your back and stuff. And so that's great. Um, a lot of Americans um, don't realize how lawless some places can be. And therefore, if they don't know how to play the system carefully, they wound up either broke or dead. So you have to be very careful when you're dealing with a system you're not used to, you're not familiar with. It's just like if I was to go to Chicago, I'd have to be pretty careful or I might wind up dead. So I don't know what the rules are. South Central, same thing. I don't know the rules.
Nobody in their right mind goes to such places.
So and that applies to everything. If you don't know what you're doing, you have to use an abundance of caution. Absolutely. Wow, it's already 7:40.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I've been talking their ears off.
Well, they're asking good questions.
Yeah, Sam has really helped out tonight. I want to thank you, Sam. You brought up a lot of good questions that take the conversation interesting places. Because I've only got so much I'm doing. And so my mind is kind of tunnel vision. And it's very helpful to have someone just ask questions. It gets me started on other stuff. I'm sure there's people watching tonight that haven't heard some of the things that we're talking. I also know there's people tonight that have heard everything we've talked about before. But I say it comes in handy. Oh, you're welcome, Sam. That's what we like here. Rock and Chris are the same way. We like to share our knowledge, help people avoid expensive mistakes, which are real easy to make in this business. Yeah. Well, all power flows from the barrel of a gun. I know places, Paul, down near the border in Arizona, where the border patrol doesn't go after the sun goes down. you know. Yeah, Rock Butcher is very knowledgeable because he's been a lot of places and done a lot of things. I think Chris is knowledgeable more because he just is smart and he's done a lot of research. So, anyhow, say it's really feels good to finally have come up with a solution that's working, and I can basically just get everything set, turn it on, and come back the next day, and the electrolytic cell is full of gold. Yeah, Chris, me too. Now that we're old enough to know what we would like to do, if we go back to when we were 20, we'd know which way to go to get those experiences. Yeah, Kodak. Well, and nowadays you got enormous amounts of information that are available, and it's more a matter of how to navigate the information, how to find the things you're looking for. For example, what's the best pump for what I'm looking for? I'll have to do a lot of research. Say I want something that's variable speed or variable flow, probably around oh, what do you call it? 1 gallon per minute. What I'm trying to do is just expand the resin in the cartridge so that the particles are kind of free floating around in a little bit of a Brownian motion sort of thing. And I don't want to push it so fast it's shoving it all up against the top of the cartridge either. So I'll be having to test that out. Probably just take some resin and hook up a hose and then just adjust the flow rate until it's doing what I want. And then you just take a 5-gallon bucket, set it under the outfalls, stopwatch. piece of cake. Then once you've got it figured out what the flow rate is you need, then you see how everything else works with that. If it works well, then I say I need a pump that'll do this, and I can do that. I can just leave the resin in the cartridges and flush them with water to clean it out, and then use the elution solution, and then use the regeneration solution and all that other stuff. Yeah, Kodak, but I'd like to have something I can buy for the simple fact that if I'm selling these things, I want it to be standardized. I want you to be able to get parts for it. And I don't want to spend a lot of time building anything. The kit, for example, we build a few components like the rack that everything fits on and this and that and the other. But things like the power supply, the pump, everything like that, they're not going to be mounted. They're going to be just packed in there and with instructions. When you get it, you got to do a little assembly, just like IKEA. All the parts aren't put together. You got to do a little bit of work yourself.
And owner's manuals.
But it makes it a lot easier to put together, more, economical, and it ships better. At this point, Rock, it's going to have to be when dihydrogen monoxide is liquid, I'm pretty sure. Aside from that, I don't know. We haven't discussed any more details because things have been like frozen, and they're going to stay frozen for like months. And so that, I say, there's been no urgency on that. I've been working mainly on the stuff at the lab. That's a good one, Rock. Rock says IKEA is Swedish for what the fuck? Yep. So I say that's basically the idea. Something we can just put all the components in there with instructions and the few custom things we build and put it in a tote, which is your secondary containment right there, and send it to you. And, that would make it fairly simple. Be a lot less labor involved than if we actually assembled it. And it's going to be more compact. And again, all these parts are shipped in packaging that's designed to protect them. Why eliminate that? Just leave them in the packaging. Hey, there's Jim. Ask him, Rock. Um, understand what you're saying, Chris? Uh, that's not necessarily a bad idea. I want something that's self-priming because of the chemicals and stuff, but I'd also like it to where there's nothing exposed to the chemicals. Diaphragm pump. We'd have to see are there springs or things like that that'll either precipitate gold or get corroded. Don't know. One thing about a peristaltic pump, that's not an issue. And so that's one of the big advantages. Take care, Asakura. So, anyhow, um, that's kind of, I mean, you could use a centrifugal pump with a magnetic drive, plastic centrifugal pump. I've actually got one of those, but it's not self priming. So, so that's one of the things that I'm looking for is chemical resistance, lack of parts that are going to precipitate gold. Um, I need to look again more closely at the hoses out there at the mill because last time I looked at that one brass fitting, it seemed awfully yellow. Diaphragms, valves, and housing. Yeah, but there's got to be some kind of springs involved too. When you're dealing with water, that's not a problem. Dealing with solution could be a problem, especially when we're plating gold onto stainless steel. Yeah, I understand, John. And for your own use, that makes pretty good sense. For sales, you want standardization if you can do it. Entirely, entirely possible, Poker Face. However, if you got a significant amount of gold, the actual refining costs are fairly modest for a major refiner. Let's see what Chris is sending me here. Yeah, yeah, I've had them a lot. So I don't know what's in the valving, but that is a good possibility. Although I'd prefer 110 volt in most cases because your power supply is going to be 110 and like that. It's nice to have standardization, but yeah, I understand exactly. I've bought a number of those. There's something called a cut of grade where large operations don't bother capturing. Um, I think you mean larger operations on your scale. Most of the really large mines, as in tens of thousands of tons a day, they're perfectly happy to recover the fine gold with leaching. I understand, Chris. It's 12 volts. In terms of flow rates, you're probably about right. Again, I'm going to be laid up for a couple of weeks where I'm not going to be able to do much. So I've been kind of like, okay, I'll figure it out. When I can't really do much. Um, we'll see how I feel tomorrow after the surgery. Should be in the hospital for about a day. Didn't the doctor say he wanted to keep me an extra day because of my age?
He said he might, yes.
Yeah. There's a higher than average chance that he'll keep me an extra day for observation just because of my age. There's a number of things close to where he's going to be working that are like really important, and they want to just make sure that they didn't mess anything up, which is good with me because the last time somebody cut on me, they messed something up and didn't notice it, and it turned out to be less than ideal. So thank you, Sam. I say it should be routine, but I know I'm going to be having to take it easy for a while, which is never good for me. But I got some reports to write. I got some research to do. I can draw up my plans for the stripping circuit and things like that. Thanks, Pokerface. When we get it, when we get things done, then we'll go from there. No outlier. No, they're hiatal hernia, where the esophagus goes through the diaphragm. And thank you, Paul.
I don't think you're supposed to take Tums after this either.
I don't know. Oh, when you're doing your thing, I'm going to need to get a little bit of snack at least, because you said you don't want me eating after 9, which seems quite reasonable to me. We got that chicken, which would be good. Oh, yeah, I need to check and see if we got any cornstarch. I could make me some chicken, cream of chicken soup. Yeah. John,
You do not need.
I don't get any respect. Hi, Ricky. How's it going?
You can use oat fiber, you know. It just takes longer to become soup.
Oh, we'll see. Ah, you're welcome, Pokerface. I say, we'll go ahead and see what we can do to help everybody out. Somebody, I'm not sure exactly who it was, had a project in Arizona. They were interested in seeing if I could help them out. Said, call me Thursday and we'll just talk and see what I can do. I won't be able to go down there though, so we'll have to, just talk about things. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And again, I forget your name. I know it's not Gordon. That's your dad. Kevin. Yeah, certainly have gotten great mileage from it. Yeah, I've got to be at the hospital at 9:00 in the morning, Ricky. Yeah, Lauren's going to pick me up and take me over there and be there 1 to 2 days and then back here. And if everything goes well, the unpleasantness about this is it's going to be a liquid diet for like 6 weeks. What do you use cornstarch for? To thicken things. If you have like you had chicken and broth, get it hot, put in a little cornstarch. It's now gravy,
Just like people do with roux.
Resort dog, no. I will not be able to do any solid foods or it could get really unpleasant,
Cheer up, dude. I spent 5 months on a liquid diet. I know what's up with this stuff.
I understand, little one.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Oh, good grief. Rock says at Lac des Iles, they were grinding to 54 microns.
If it's rich enough, it's worth it.
Hi, everybody. So, for anybody who has missed the news, you ain't missed much, okay? Just to let you know, I mean, everything out there is just doing its thing and being studiously ignored. Though I did have a moment of silence today for a 31-year-old American Idol alumnus that died suddenly. The guy had a really great voice. I mean, it's just kind of bizarre and unaccountable how this stuff happens. Gold is currently at $1,910 and change. What do you know? And silver is at $24.16 and change. Hi, Polka Face. Yeah, lock this lees.
I know you're not pronouncing that right.
Yeah, I know.
Let's see.
Yeah, I heard about the 18-year-old MMA fighter from Hawaii and those two high school kids in the same week in Las Vegas. I mean,
Well, it's almost like something's happening.
it's just bizarre, unaccountable, and ridiculous shit, as we all know. Just like Captain Dementia. Apparently, Captain Dementia's crackhead son was paying him $49,000 a month in rent for that house in Wilmington. The one where they were storing the classified documents in the garage next to the Corvette, you know. Now, the goddess has to wonder if anyone is taking a look at Lord Malarkey's tax returns, because, come to think of it, can he even legally charge rent for that house?
Little one, latest data, somebody has, it's not reported as income.
Oh, well, that's rather bizarre. But then again, I suppose if you were illegally renting a house to somebody, you probably wouldn't report the income anyway. One has to wonder if he was even legally able to rent that house to anybody. But oh well, you know, that's just the way it is. And yes, Rock, I do know enough frog French to know that. It's just that my spoken Francais is not nearly as good as my reading Francais. Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing, Resort Dog. You got to wonder about some of the other funny stuff that's running around out there. Speaking of funny stuff, my hometown of Boston apparently has erected one of the ugliest statues I've ever seen to Martin Luther King. And I do have to agree with the internet that this statue has some very unfortunate visual connotations when viewed from inappropriate angles. And most of the angles are inappropriate. So there is that, you know, just saying. But yeah, the family of the late Dr. King is not very happy. And frankly, I don't blame them, because it is one bizarre and unfortunately unattractive statue. It really is. You know, yeah, Resort Dog. A lot of people are comparing that thing not to brown eels, but to a few other things that are far less pleasant than eels and not edible. But, you know.
Little one, I'm going to put this out on the porch.
So, in the middle of all this business, with gold testing $1,920 and silver breaking out at the bottom, 30 miles away, my son is moving to Medford, Polka Face. He's going to work for the tea. My boy is finally getting a job at the tea. You know? So, gold is testing key resistance at $1,920 as Yellen the felon warns Congress the U.S. could hit the debt limit January 19th. Oh, really now? The gold market is pushed to new session highs Friday afternoon after U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said the United States would likely hit its statutory debt limit on January 19th. No, you don't say. The warning has created some renewed safe haven demand for the precious metal. February gold futures last traded at $1,919.90 an ounce, up more than 1% on the day. At the same time, analysts have said the 1920 level represents a significant resistance point. In a letter to Congress, Yellen said as early as next week the Treasury would be forced to take extraordinary measures. to prevent a default. Really now. Once the limit is reached, Treasury will need to start taking certain extraordinary measures to prevent the United States from defaulting on its obligations, Yellen said in the letter. She urged lawmakers to act quickly to raise the debt ceiling, but said Congress should have a few months to resolve the issue. So, statutory limit on the 19th. Congress needs to act quickly, but they have a few months, and we do have extraordinary measures. Yeah, it's about par for the course here. While Treasury is not currently able to provide an estimate of how long extraordinary measures will enable us to continue to pay the government's obligations, it is unlikely that cash and extraordinary measures will be exhausted before early June, Yellen said in the letter. The issue of the U.S. debt garnered new attention at the start of the year as it became a sticking point during the House of Representatives speakership vote. Some members of the Republican Party conditioned their role for House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on deep spending cuts accompanying any rise in the debt limit. The goddess is a firm believer in fiscal prudence. As far as the goddess is concerned, as we have not had a budget for several presidential administrations now and have been running on continuing resolutions, we need a reset to the last time we had a budget. And no spending more than that. Raising the debt limit makes about as much sense as raising your credit card limits when you're already $1 million in debt. But on a government scale, it's even worse, Economists and political analysts have said the Republican small majority in the House could complicate negotiations on the debt ceiling, raising the risk the nation defaults on its obligations. In an interview with Bloomberg, Thomas Simons, an economist at Jefferies, said the near deadlock in the House almost completely eliminates any chance of it being handled smoothly, which was already pretty low. Okay. So Yellen the felon is not happy at the moment. Oh well. The goddess predicts we're going to see another round of scaremongering news articles about food stamps and Social Security being shut off if the Republicans don't behave. This is standard operating procedure for our kleptocrats in Mordor on the Potomac, as we all know. We shall see what we shall see. In the meantime, there was also more attention given to certain FDIC meetings of late because more people are beginning to wake up to the fact that the FDIC only has enough funds to cover about 1.3% of insured deposits. People are beginning to wonder how you pay off 100% of insured deposits if you only have 1.3% of the money. And a couple of people have even asked the salient question, well, the FDIC says they can borrow money from people, so who are they going to borrow it from?
Us.
Questions are now being asked about many, many things. The goddess is a fan of questions, okay? Oh, yeah, Kodak. Liars can figure all right. All the ones in Washington. And yes, they are all criminals on both sides, Horton. They are kleptocrats. This is a functioning uniparty, and their number one job is to make our lives difficult. What else is new,
Well, that's their hobby. Their job is
Exactly, Paul. Fiat is not money. Gold is money, silver is money, land is currency. It can also be a store of wealth. Fiat is not money. Fiat is a debt instrument. And you need to ask yourself, the almost 32 trillion with a T debt that we have right now, that is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Um, just where are they getting the assets to back up that fiat? Because it sure as hell ain't in Fort Knox. That is a new talking point that is once again making the rounds on Reddit and various financial subs. The population of Reddit has decided that it's quite simple. When we go back on the gold standard, which we only came off temporarily, all the gold in Fort Knox is going to cover all the real money and all the paper is just going to magically disappear. Well, the goddess believes everyone listening right now is probably smart enough to know just how bizarre and delusional that particular sentiment happens to be. Always assuming that the gold in Fort Knox is even in Fort Knox, which the goddess has very sincere doubts about and has for some time. If they revalued gold high enough to cover all of the magic pieces of paper that are floating around, then they really would crash the world economy. Come to think of it, this might not be a bad idea at this point. The goddess could think of worse ideas, like the $1 trillion platinum coin that is once again making the news. Because apparently our president, whoever he happens to be at the time, can order the minting of a $1 trillion platinum coin, which, if it actually was $1 trillion in platinum, would weigh about 40,000 pounds or somewhere, around there. Always assuming
we're talking face value.
Yeah, we're getting to that. Always assuming that you had the equipment to mint a coin of that size. It would be an interesting curiosity. I don't know what the hell you'd ever do with it. But the plan seems to be to attach an arbitrary face value on this coin. The fine art of economics is dead, along with the sock industry and a few other things. The fine art of economics is apparently dead. Okay? Just to let everybody know. All in all, it has been a fairly interesting market week. Commodities are doing odd things. Energy is doing odd things. Metals are doing relatively normal things, all things considered, but we shall see what we shall see. Meanwhile, Canada, good for Canada. Canada approves James Bay lithium project in Quebec. Now, the goddess does not know much about lithium, but the goddess will say at least one developed nation is actually approving mining projects rather than just talking about it. This is a good thing. The Canadian government said on Monday it approved Galaxy Resources' James Bay lithium project in Quebec. As proposed, the spodumene operation would include an open pit mine and concentrator facility, tailings, waste rock, ore, and overburden storage areas, as well as related infrastructure.
I think it's spodumene, but I'm not sure.
Well, spodumene, it's spelled that way. It is expected to produce an average of 5,480 tons of ore per day over a mine life of 15 to 20 years. This is an important decision for Canada, Minister of Natural Resources Jonathan Wilkinson said in a statement. The James Bay lithium mine project will produce a key ingredient of clean technology like electric batteries and solar panels. Yeah, we're going to draw the curtain of charity over that whole idea. Galaxy also owns its flagship McCatlin mine in Western Australia and the Sal de Vida project located in Catamarca province on the Sala de Hombre Muerto, approximately 1,400 kilometers northwest of Buenos Aires, Argentina. The government of Canada recently announced its critical mineral strategy, in which lithium is listed as one of 6 top critical minerals due to its importance in the clean technology sector. In particular, the manufacturing of rechargeable batteries for hybrid and electric vehicles. Now, the goddess wishes she had saved the link, but there was a very, very excellent link on just how ungreen all this crap is on Twitter, of all places. Twitter has become something less of a cesspool since old Elon took charge over there. As a matter of fact, it's getting downright interesting in some areas. The goddess is liking this. But yeah, a dude did the math on all this, and then he went into the mining details. And basically, all this green agenda stuff is about as ungreen as you can get. Witness the dead whales that are washing up on the shore in New Jersey that are apparently somehow managing to get themselves killed by wind turbines. The goddess hasn't figured that one out yet, but the articles haven't been all that specific either. The goddess does not approve of unnecessary dead whales. That's just not appropriate at all. Period. End of story. I like whales. Just saying, I like whales. And the mining situation in South America is continuing to deteriorate in several different countries. No surprises there. Glencore evacuates personnel after protesters vandalize Antapaque mine camp. The campsite at Glencore's Antapaque copper mine in southern Peru was vandalized by a group of people protesting against the country's new president and demanding a general election. The goddess believes this might be president number 4 or maybe number 5 in 8 years. According to local media, the incident took place on Friday morning when protesters broke into the site's water plant and set the facility on fire. The plant provides drinking water to over 6,000 people in nearby communities. The Peruvian press pointed out the company reported the incident to police and asked for increased security measures around Antapaque, but their claims went unheard. Really now. Most national police officers have been deployed in the cities of Puno, Juliaca, and Cusco as the government attempts to contain protests sprouting in different areas. Given this response, Glencore issued a communique stating management decided to evacuate most of the 2,400 people that were at the mining camp, among them staff and contract workers. Only essential personnel needed to maintain basic operations going will remain at the site. Friday's attack was not the first of its kind. Glencore reported on Thursday at noon criminals forced their entry into Antapaque, burned 2 vehicles, and trashed the accommodations used by overnight workers. The president of the 11 indigenous communities in Antapaque's area of influence, Flavio Huanque, told La República newspaper none of his communities participated in any of the attacks. These and other demonstrations taking place across the Andean country pose a challenge to new President Dina Boluarte as she tries to restore calm after the ousting of former President Pedro Castillo last year. So that's what's going on in Peru. And in case you missed it, they're still protesting in France about pension reform and working hours and high food prices. And they're still protesting in Italy and Venezuela and Brazil and about 40 or 50 other countries at the moment. But it's not like it's about anything terribly important yet. Just saying. Yet. There is a yet in there, people. Gold price seen rising toward record highs as rate rises near end. Gold prices are expected to rise to record highs above 2,000 an ounce this year, albeit with a little turbulence, as the United States slows the pace of rate hikes, which we'll get to in a minute, and eventually stops increasing them, according to industry analysis. Spot prices of the precious metals have shot above 1,900 an ounce, surging by about 18% since early November, as inflationary pressures recede and markets anticipate less aggressive monetary policy from the Federal Reserve. Fast rising interest rates hammered gold prices last year, kicking them as low as $1,613.60 in September, from a high of $2,069 in March, just shy of a record peak in 2020. Higher rates lifted returns on bonds, making non-yielding gold less desirable for financial investors, and pushed the dollar to the strongest in 20 years, making dollar price gold costlier for many buyers. The weakening U.S. currency and bond yields will become macro tailwinds for the yellow metal, pushing gold above 2,000 an ounce in the coming months, said analysts at Bank of America. Coincidentally, Bank of America got a hold of a rather nice pile of paper gold the last time it got shorted to oblivion and went in the toilet for about a minute at 3 in the morning. Oh no, I'm sure there's no vested interest going on there. Sorry. With less pressure from the dollar and bonds, investors are likely to buy bullion as a hedge against inflation and economic turbulence, said Wisdom Tree analyst Nitesh Shah, adding prices could easily move above 2,100 an ounce by year end. Gold is traditionally seen as a safe place to store wealth. The risk of central banks overdoing it and pushing their economies into recession is high, said Shah. Speculators who in November were betting gold prices would fall have amassed a net long position in COMEX futures of 8.3 million ounces of gold worth $16 billion, helping to push up prices. Analysts expect central banks to continue stockpiling gold after buying more metal in the first 9 months of 2022 than any year in half a century, according to the World Gold Council. Retail demand for gold bars and coins should also remain strong, boosted by a revival of economic growth in China, the biggest consumer market, said analysts at ANZ. But gold may have gone too far, too fast in the short term and needs to correct lower, analysts said. Should prices fall from current levels to the 1870 to 1900 an ounce range, we expect the upward trend to reverse, the bank said. Adding, if gold falls below 1800, it could slip to 1730. Interesting. Very, very interesting, that is. The goddess finds the shenanigans of banks rather amusing. Speaking of banks, Goldman Sachs, decided it was a brilliant idea after saying they were going to lay off about 1,600 workers to then say they were going to lay off, well, maybe closer to 2,300 workers. And then one fine day, not more than a couple of days ago, they announced the layoff of 3,200 workers and gave them a half an hour to pack their stuff and GTFO out of the office. That's a little bit rude, even for a bank. And in other bizarre banking news, Credit Suisse's biggest competitor decided that, even though they were offered a really sweet deal to get a hold of some Credit Suisse, decided that they didn't want it. This coming on the heels of the National Bank of Switzerland announcing the largest ever loss in their entire history is rather interesting, especially since Credit Suisse is definitely way too big to fail without some serious consequences, since the bank is a whole lot bigger than the National Bank of Switzerland. So again, the goddess has to wonder if that might not be part of the reason that foreign types are coming hat in hand to none other than our FDIC to see about, whether there may be some spare change rolling around somewhere in the empty closets here and there. And the goddess has to wonder, given how disturbed our banks seem to be by this slow-moving train wreck, just how much American money is floating around in Credit Suisse at the moment, because the stock is still down in the toilet and people are still buying it, and we don't know who. But considering it's pretty much a losing proposition at this point, you got to wonder about that one. There are many things we must wonder about when it comes to these banks. like our dear friends JP Morgan making an entry back into precious metals again in a big way overseas, and a couple of other banks are rearing their ugly little heads here and there, like our, you know, dear friends over at HSBC, and even the Bank of Montreal has been dealing with some odd characters of late. These banks are playing funny, funny games behind the scenes, and the goddess is beginning to get very curious as to what's going on with that. Because it turns out that a whole lot of them had managed to rehypothecate your deposits and mine. Well, the goddess is smart enough to keep her money out of banks for the most part, but every once in a while there is a small amount in there. They've been investing in crypto. And the crypto meltdown is quietly continuing in the background of all this. Even Coinbase announced another line of layoffs that's pretty darn significant. And the goddess has noticed that Coinbase has been trying to talk me into depositing money so I can buy crypto because it's safer than fiat. And it turns out that Binance is allowing people who use them and borrow from them and everything else to store collateral on their own personal hard wallets, which I can kind of sort of understand here. And they're also using some standard bank financial services to pull financial shenanigans. So now we have hedge funds taking an absolute bloodbath in the last year, even worse than they did during COVID. We have crypto taking an absolute bloodbath. We have central banks taking an absolute bloodbath. And somehow, in the middle of all this, Oxfam announced that the world had some sort of a wealth explosion happen during COVID. And of course, the 0.1% got a hold of most of that new wealth that was generated. The goddess believes these people probably define the word wealth differently than I do. Because given how actual production levels of things, as in physical things, have been falling for several years straight now, some of them worse than others, it appears that these people have decided to define wealth as numbers on paper rather than actual things like gold and silver. This may or may not be a good thing for those of us who buy gold and silver because, of course, as long as the prices stay down, we can back up the truck. And boy, did I get some beautiful pieces today down at the store. And after going to the local coin shop and getting a sweet deal on an older Libertad and a commemorative Edison round and some pretty toners, we headed over to ye old Walmart, which is still a semi-sockless dystopian hellscape, just so you know. Socks are apparently still a thing of the past. This may well be permanent, I am sure. So there we are at ye old Walmart, where eggs had finally gone down below $20 again to $19.96 for a case. They were $25.50 last week for a case. So since they were on sale, we bought a case. And lunch meat, the great value sliced lunch meat that the goddess wanted for convenient, no dishes meals while he is recovering from surgery for me, since he's getting nothing but liquid, costs more than $73.27 hamburger. Chicken breasts cost more than $80.20 hamburger. Milk, yeah, milk has gone up. There were tons of clearance signs everywhere. The goddess could have built an entire wardrobe worthy of Imelda Marcos of ugly Christmas clothing that is still being clearanced out. Oh, and there's still Christmas clearance at Winco too. Rather bizarre that. Just, saying here. It was fascinating to see just how dysfunctional the supply chain is becoming here. And it all comes back to eggs in this discussion because eggs are this year's toilet paper, people. Okay? Do we all remember TP Mageddon from, that whole lockdown thing that happened where there was no toilet paper to be had for love nor money anywhere in the world? And there were perfectly good reasons for this. There are perfectly good reasons for the eggs as well that the media is not discussing. The goddess saw quite a few articles about potential price gouging on eggs. The goddess saw a few articles about bird flu causing the egg problem. The goddess saw no articles about the absolute crisis levels in livestock feed impacting battery egg farms. The goddess also only saw one regional article that came out where one battery farm had to cull their entire facility because their hens were starving to death. Their hens were starving to death because though they had plenty of feed on order, that feed had gotten lost somewhere between point A and point B, and the railway had not even delivered it. So their birds were starving to death. So they had to cull them. And it is interesting to note one thing that we all need to start looking for in the middle of this, along with noting the size and number of leg quarters in a 10-pound bag. As the feed supply chain gets worse, the very first animals that will be impacted are poultry, fowl, and pigs, because birds are almost 100% reliant on their feedstock. This whole pasture raised thing that has driven the egg prices in California up and has the price for a half a dozen eggs in some parts of Colorado up over $7 for 6 eggs. That is another whole side issue. That only affects places that are stupid enough to enact such disgustingly ridiculous policies that disparately impact the lower income communities that they're supposed to be serving. The crisis in feed is going to affect your poultry first because your poultry, for the most part, is 100% feed based. Even those so called cage free birds get very, very little of their food actually that is real food, the food they're supposed to be eating. Pigs are next on the list because while pigs are mostly feed dependent, if you've ever seen what a pig does to a pasture, you'd know why that is the case. They have a far wider variety of foods that they can actually digest, up to and including human scraps. We all know about slops. The last animals to be affected by a feed shortage, after the goats, after the sheep, after everybody, the last animals that are going to be impacted will be your sheep and your cattle. Because even before all this went down, contrary to popular belief, the average cow in the United States was spending over 70% of its life on range eating grass or eating locally grown alfalfa grown by a rancher right there. They get feedlotted to finish them off and to give them that nice marbling and that little extra fat. So, one thing to watch for here is when the price of fattier meat goes higher than the price of lean beef. Because when you see that, there is no feed. That means no cattle are going to feedlots unless they absolutely have to. And we may well get there because we are now seeing the prices of what used to be the cheapest foods, the chicken and the cheap pork, are now beginning to outpace beef prices and rise. And that is happening because our beef cattle have another source of food, their most common source of food. Chickens don't, pigs don't. And we have a real growing problem here that comes back to mining, by the way, because one of the products that is essentially disappeared from the world is urea. And one of the many uses of urea is fertilizer.
What to do
So,
with mining?
well, urea is also used in mining, as we all know. And I told you the other day, you're going to go looking for it. You may have trouble finding it, and you may have trouble finding it at a decent price because you can't find a lot of these chemicals now. They're going to start disappearing, which is why the goddess is going to be focusing on figuring out how to recover some of this crap. Because right now, you can find it. 6 months from now, you may not be able to find it. So if you see things out and about that do store, that can store easily, that you do use on a fairly regular basis, and you can get them, it's probably a good idea to do so because more shit is disappearing. You know, that's just the way it is. Bye bye.
I don't know if Sam's still here, but I don't think he's been here since we did the sign language interpretation for humor. Oh, Soylent Green. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Oh, yeah, there have been several articles lately touting the virtues of cannibalism, by the way.
Yeah, I know who I'll volunteer for that. The people writing the articles. I think that would be most appropriate. Have I been practicing my bacon making skills? No, I have not. I agree, it's a serious lack. Do you know how to make bacon, little one?
Yes, I know how to make bacon.
I
You
figured.
want it cured, smoked, cured and smoked, and do you have a pig handy? It's kind of helpful to have a pig handy.
A pig?
Yes.
Oh, you gotta have a pig, huh?
A Poland China is a good choice for bacon. Landrace is good too, but not quite as good as a Poland China, in my opinion.
Anyhow, Shaggy says, have a good one. Well, wait a minute. I am the good one. Oh, you know something about tomorrow I don't? Okay. Can you use DEF for mining urea? I don't think you mine urea. I think you synthesize it.
You synthesize urea in the lab these days, but you can make it out of pee.
If we can all just get pissed off enough.
Fermented horse pee.
She knows how to do a lot more than that, Goldstream. She was raised in her summers in Maine on a little truck farm with some old people who've been around a long time and still did it the old ways. Solving the population problem. One liberal at a time, huh?
We are the carbon they want to reduce.
Yeah.
This is a known fact.
No, we got to just reverse it. No problem. Beat me to it, Eva. Darn, she said.
I'm thinking talking carbon sequestration. We bury them all
Carbon sequestration.
alive.
Eh, they're harder to. You have to have steeper walls that way, little one.
I was thinking oubliettes. Oubliettes work.
Yeah. Keith says hi. Thanks.
Hi.
Goldstream says his wife. Kodak says who says. Oh, anyhow. So on that positive note, say we're doing a good job getting the gold out of the resin. Once I get back into the lab, probably in about 2 weeks, I would guess, we'll be doing some more experiments during the stripping process.
I wonder if we should class this one under cannibalism.
I don't know what.
Now the Guardian is asking if plants are so intelligent, should we stop eating them? Well, if we stop eating meat and we stop eating plants,
That doesn't leave a
our
lot left.
choices are frankenfood grown by Beyond Meat and Impossible, or people, I would think.
Well, I think we're supposed to eat sand. Doesn't have a lot of flavor, a little tough to chew. I suggest if somebody wants us to eat something else like eatsy bugs, them first. That's my philosophy. Show me how to do it. Paul suggests we use them as golf tees, But anyhow, so say the stripping circuit seems to be working well. And shortly we'll be doing more defining of the various parameters and such, like what happens if you increase the flow rates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And go from there. But it's looking pretty interesting. And then I'll need to start doing some paperwork in terms of getting things lined up for the springtime. And hey, Jim, I think you're still here. How long does it usually typically take to get one of those exploration permits from the time you file the paperwork? Just asking. Oh. So green from politicians is carcinogenic, huh?
I wouldn't need a politician. You don't know where the hell they've been.
A month or two? Okay. Hear about registering electric car battery? Yeah, I heard something about that, but I've been watching them try and get highway taxes by the mile by installing tracking devices in everybody's car. It's like, yeah, sure, you already get a very nice, easily recoverable tax from people driving their car from something called fuel taxes. Why would you want to do something that takes billions of dollars per state to implement to achieve the same result? Because you're getting something else along with it. As in, where is everybody? Although with the cell phones, I don't even know why they're bothering at this point. Geez, just follow the cell phones. It gives you a lot more data than a car would anyhow. So I say, I don't know. Was it still electric cars don't pay fuel tax? Yeah, once you get enough of them, they will. Just one second, I had to look at something here. Okay. Well, it looks like the fog has finally lifted.
Electric cars are not green.
Increase the tire tax, yeah. So there's lots of ways of doing these things. The fuel tax made perfect sense. And as somebody pointed out, if you go from a fuel tax to a mileage tax, you're now punishing the people who bought the more economical cars. Because, for example, if you had an electric car, right now you're not paying fuel tax. But that doesn't make sense because they use the roads too. So now we need to do something else to tax them. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I don't have to give them any ideas, Jim. They get ideas faster than I can debunk them, you know? Oh no, they won't let you turn it in off the odometer, Paul. They're going to have a tracking device in your car which will automatically add it up.
It was in the last omnibus bill, a black box with a kill switch
Oh, black box with a kill switch now
in new cars.
in all new cars.
One good reason to not buy a new car.
Yeah. Electronics can rebel. Mechanical stuff just fails. Probably, Jeff, they're going to try everything. What do you think those 82,000 IRS agents were designed for? What makes you think our so-called leaders make sense? Well, nothing, but they think they make sense. So you have to figure out what their plan is, and their plan is not necessarily nonsensical, just evil.
They make perfect sense for whatever their actual goal is.
Well, they think it makes perfect. It was kind of like sanctioning Russia to crush their economy. Didn't exactly work the way it was planned.
Well, it didn't work the way they said it would. But since we don't know what their actual plan is, we don't know how well it furthers their actual
Well,
plan.
it's possible that they were trying to destroy the Western civilization that they're trying to put together.
Yeah, they want to usher
But
in a world government.
I don't think. Yeah, well, the Great Reset doesn't work when you can't when your organizations like the European Union are falling apart. That's what I'm saying. If you want to get everyone to join together, you don't fracture stuff. Of course, there isn't enough grid for the cars in the first place, not even close. And windmills and solar cells don't even come close to replacing what we've currently got in the grid. So it's mathematically insane. But again, that just leaves either they're insane, which is always a possibility, or B, their motivation isn't what they're saying it is. I vote for number 2 being the primary cause. So we shall see. On the other hand, it does mean the price of precious metals should go up. Oh, I don't know, Paul. I say it's just getting so bizarre. I'm so annoyed that my country has gone crazy. Well, it depends on what you're trying to manage it for, Keith. Are you trying to manage it for good purposes or for evil? For evil, it's pretty easy. You know, you can stampede people into doing all kinds of stupid stuff. It's a lot easier to destroy than to build. You know? But anyhow, so say that's kind of where it looks like to me. And that's one reason I want to get this surgery done now. Is with all the things that are happening at the moment, I have no confidence that the healthcare system will be in reasonably functional shape 6 to 12 months from now. So I want to get things done as soon as possible. So any kind of preventive maintenance I can get done that's going to be essentially permanent, like to get it done so that I won't have to worry about the things like famotidine and Tums in the future. Oh, I agree that if they're properly informed, and this is one of the other problems, is if you don't have good information running around there readily accessible, people are a lot easier to stampede. That's why the censorship is so important. You know, I don't remember that one, Paul. Absolutely, John. It makes no sense at all from a rational, physical standpoint. Thank you, Shaggy. I'm pretty confident about the surgery. I'm not so happy about the 6 weeks of drinking my food. Wasn't Belial the god of a meaningless world? Belial? Baal? I'm not sure.
Belial.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He spells it Balil.
He might well have been.
John, I would like to be repaired, not just fixed. Okay? I'm already halfway there. Uh, so, anyhow, anything else? I don't know. Anyone got some good questions? Oh, a lot of the requirements of all kinds of things for electric vehicles is ridiculous. That would make sense, Keith. That's what we're trying to get to. It's not just the amount of mining in terms of the critical minerals, it's the power supply, it's the sheer manufacturing effort required, et cetera, et cetera. George C. Scott, the formula, huh? Okay. The thing is, if they require electric vehicles and there's none there, then that pretty much means you don't get a vehicle. You know, they've taken your transportation from them. It's public transit or nothing. Again, it may work in some countries. I don't think it's going to work here. I especially don't think it's going to work in Montana, you know. But say, we shall see. There comes a point where people are just going to say no, and we wind up like Peru or Brazil. See what happens. Oh, meanwhile, Putin will be laughing all the way to the bank. Oh, sanction me again. Oh, baby, sanction me harder. My concern is it looks like they're getting ready to dump old Biden overboard. That'll bring Kamala in, and she's such a doofus. I don't think they can make that one work no matter how hard they try. Thank you, Dirt Life. You guys take care, Chuck and Connie. And so my question is, who are they going to nominate to be vice president once Kamala takes the presidency? Because that's the person I think we got to worry about. We shall see. Just watch, they're expecting a 50,000 layoff in medical fields.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's administrators and such, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Well, there's a worldwide shortage of frontline healthcare workers, not the people running things, but the people facing patients.
Yeah, I know. That's the way it usually works. Once it becomes a bureaucracy, it becomes horribly inefficient and top heavy. Colorado is way too cold for electric cars. I'm guessing too, although I haven't studied it sufficiently to have a firm opinion.
So's Montana.
Yeah.
So's Alaska.
Montana's worse. A lot like Texas making a law everybody has to carry. I don't like requiring people. There are some people that shouldn't. I don't think it should be banned. But I say there's some people that are just idiots. And I don't think they should be allowed to drive. But yeah, in Kennesaw, Georgia, where they made a law requiring everyone to have a gun, not carry it, but have a gun, they did allow people to opt out. It was no penalty opt out, but you had to file some paperwork. And they also had a lot of gun owners donate their excess guns so that poor people wouldn't have to hurt their finances to get them. And of course, the crime rate in Kennesaw dropped enormously. Yeah, see, that's it. But Paul, she can't run the I mean, she just can't pull it off, you know? And that's why, say, it's the person after her, because she can be removed at any time. As a person, if Biden's taken out, then Kamala goes there, and then she'll nominate someone to be vice president who will then have to be confirmed by a Democrat controlled Senate, rubber stamp. That's the person I'm worried about. They might actually be reasonably competent, but not in a way I would like.
And this person got an award.
Who got an award, little one?
This comment: the U.S. has not and will not default on its debts. The debts of the United States are denominated in U.S. dollars, the country's own currency, which gives it the unique power to print money theoretically without end to cover debt payments.
Right.
The debt in the United States is largely irrelevant as long as we have a stable and growing GDP, which we do. Debates about the debt ceiling are mostly political.
Well, they're right, but that's exactly why you generally get hyperinflation.
Yeah, well, somebody tried to correct them and was downvoted to oblivion.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how you get hyperinflation. Well, we just print more money. It has an effect.
Mises.org is the place to go.
She is from Cali. I can't think. You mean Kamala Harris? Is that who you're talking about? Yeah, she makes Biden look smart.
Yeah, well, she did inform the world that the Caribbean is in the Western Hemisphere, so they're our neighbors last week.
Oh, good.
I mean, nobody knew this.
Nah, I did. My mom was a geography teacher. I had to learn that stuff. That's right, man. We didn't have tests at home, but you didn't want to get on her bad side. That could be, Jeff. I'm not sure. I have no idea. But that's what my spidey sense is saying. Don't worry about Kamala. Worry about who comes in behind her. That's the person to worry about. That's my guess. We shall see. And doesn't seem likely that the mining regulation is going to ease up in the next 2 years. Because, about the only thing the Republicans in the House could do would just simply defund the BLM or something. That's not going to help us. Now she's Latin American, huh?
Really?
The Bible was wrong. The crazies are inheriting the earth. And they're not very meek either. They're loud and annoying. Oh. So, yeah. Interesting times. It feels good to get that stripping thing figured out at least. Yeah, the problem with that, Keith, though, is she has to be able to at least put up some kind of image that isn't complete blithering idiot. And she doesn't do that one very well. I say, any good actress or actor could do that job, as long as they were, sociopathic. But she's got nothing, Yeah, Jim. Ooh, Goldstream. Yeah, I can see your problem too. Yeah, I think Trudeau is in many ways worse than Biden because he's the front man, not just the talking head. I mean, he actually does this stuff. Biden just does whatever he's told, in my opinion. Kamala can't even do what she's told because she can't remember it. Biden has trouble with that too, but at least in a case like that, he's just wandering around dazed and confused, so he's easy to lead off, you know. Well, Shaggy, in about 5 days, something important happens. It then becomes 2 years and 1 day since the inauguration. So whoever then takes over can work for uh, 10 years instead of just 8. So to me, that may be why they waited this long. Well, they wanted to get past the election also because they didn't want to look any worse than they had to during the election process. So, say to me, they kind of had to put it till after the election. And once you get past the election, then you put it past the trigger date. Actually, Dan Quayle wasn't nearly as silly as they made him out to be. If you look at the actual quotes in the context, he rarely said anything really stupid. They simply cropped it to where it sounded kind of funny.
Wasn't he the guy that said it's a terrible thing to lose one's mind?
That sounds more like sounds more like Reagan, because that's a good one.
Or Bush.
But
one of the two.
Let's say Dan Quayle. I actually didn't like. For example, what was that? The potato thing or whatever?
Yeah.
How do you spell potato or tomato?
Yeah.
Well, the reason he misspelled it was because he asked before the cameras were rolling, and the teacher gave him the wrong answer.
You shouldn't have had to ask in the first place, dude.
He was just making sure he got it right. And then the teacher gave him the wrong answer. And then it's like, well, Dan Quayle's stupid because he doesn't know how to spell it. No. He was stupid because he allowed somebody else to convince him. Oh, I'd say he wasn't the brightest tool in the shed, but he wasn't stupid. Kamala's just plain stupid. I would say there's a slight difference in parties, Keith. The Democratic Party is so bad that anyone who's really good leaves. The Republican Party has a few good ones left. I mean, look at Tulsi Gabbard. She just had to leave.
She's trying to get others to leave too.
Yep. Yeah, Goldstream, that might be interesting. If you can leave Vancouver out of the mix. Actually, I think the spelling bee thing was, if I'm not mistaken, the kid answered the question and Quayle thought he'd spelled it wrong. So he asked the teacher, that was the referee or whatever, is that correct? And she said, no. And so he said it's incorrect when it was, or vice versa,
I think it was the archaic spelling ending with an E as opposed to just with an O.
Yeah, John, it's getting so blatant. Things like the censorship, and quite often it's like the excess death things. Got to be very careful what we're talking. But usually if 1,000 people a week were dying in a country that was more than usual, it'd be big news. It's not. That's what's newsworthy about it, is that nobody's interested. And it's like, no, that's a very, very interesting thing. The fact that the media is not interested means they don't want to be interested, And so that is very probative, in my opinion. And as time goes on, it looks like a lot of other things that should have drawn a lot of attention didn't, and things that did draw a lot of attention and were shut down shouldn't have been, and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out. But at a minimum, there's, I think, thousands of people that need to be in jail for like the rest of their life. We shall see how it all works out once all the evidence is in, if we ever can get that far. But yeah, very, very interesting times. Oh, anyone else got a mining thing? Sam had some good things, good subjects he brought up today. That was good. And thanks for all the input, everybody. Let's see. Oh, I don't know. Any questions, anybody? If not, I should probably go to bed because I got to be up at like,
yeah, you can't eat anymore.
4:30 in the morning? No, I've already finished my eating. Goldstream, I think it's more people who are worrying about trying to move from one state to another. Like, over half of Oregon wants to become part of Idaho. And then you've got a lot of California that wants to become, their own state and stuff like that. And because we have large areas that are internally okay to live with, and we just need to segregate ourselves according to philosophy. And we're quite confident, on the conservative side, that if we can do that, they'll just collapse. I really think we should be sending all illegal migrants should be sent to sanctuary jurisdictions. Any non-sanctuary jurisdiction should give them a free ride, every one of them, to a sanctuary jurisdiction. And we'll see how long this takes. Thank you, Shaggy. Yeah, and in Canada, I think the legal mechanism is there to do that. So that's interesting, is because it's not that hard in Canada. You can legally, exfiltrate Canuckistan. In the United States, we fought a war over that, and basically it was determined by, what do they call that? Case law. That no, you're not allowed to secede. Thanks, Jeff. Eva is getting better, but it's slow. We're being very careful, making sure she doesn't fall, especially with all the ice and everything out there. I'm all the time giving her an extra supporting arm or something like that to give her as most stability as possible. By the way, that reminds me. I think, yeah, there they are. There we go. I might need those when I come home from the hospital. Was that the French and Canadian War, Goldstream? That was before the Revolutionary War, wasn't it? If I'm not mistaken. Or was that right after the Revolution? buy her some chains. Actually, I have a set. I don't know if they'll fit uh, her boots. We do have these chains if you need them. You can try them on your boots. Where are your boots?
Over there by the heater. I figured I would just continue leaning on my big, strong male. Because if you fall, you got enough padding that if I fall on top of you, I should be okay.
Okay, let's see here. I think it goes like this. And then comes around the back like that. A little loose on yours. Let's see what happens. Pull this apart. There we go. There. That looks good, little one. Yep. I agree, Jim. So, yeah, they'll work, little one. You can put them on your boots if you want to use them or try them anytime in the future. We'll see what happens when I come home from the hospital. Okay, War of 1812, huh? French and Indian War, 1756. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, War of 1812. That was kind of fought to a draw, if I'm not mistaken.
Wasn't that the one that led to the Louisiana Purchase, or was that a different war?
Louisiana Purchase, I think, was before the War of 1812. Let's see. Louisiana Purchase. Date. 1801.
That was a pretty good deal, too.
Nowadays, a troop of Girl Guides could defeat Canada. Well, they could probably defeat Trudeau. They could just outman him, and that would be the end of it.
Hey, come on. Socks is trying.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Keith. It's not going to get too bad unless the government starts first, until people are getting hungry and they don't have any food. Then they get real grumpy real fast. Warmongers of Ukraine. Well, that would be the United States. Yeah, we could have prevented that happening a long time ago. Yeah, I don't hear too many of the studded snow tires right now, Jim. But yeah, I know that I've heard a fair number of them. Sometimes that parking lot in front of the motel is pretty interesting. Trying to back out and get started again. Wow, it can get kind of slippery. Yeah, what's been bad here lately is the fog. The freezing fog was the worst. But the other day, we were headed back from Lawrence. It was just, foggy, but nothing big deal. And then all of a sudden, we hit a patch of fog, and the visibility just dropped to less than 50 feet. I mean, I was having trouble even seeing the lines on the road. It was insane. I had to slow way down, and luckily there wasn't oncoming traffic. I don't think there was. Was there, little one?
No.
Yeah. But I mean, even just driving by myself, I could barely see the lane markings, and I was doing like I don't know, 15, 20 miles an hour. I broke pretty quick. And yeah, I think so too, Jim. Sad, but we shall see. Oh, but yeah, that was the fog has been really interesting the last week. And then today it was foggy all day long. Not bad here in Helena. I suspect down by Lauren's house it might have been really bad. And even Walmarts are closing. Are they closing Walmarts there in Tucson, Keith? Or is that other places or whatever? It wouldn't surprise me. I couldn't believe how unattended Walmart was on Black Friday. That was
Walmart is still relatively unattended. You notice how much Christmas clearance there was?
no, it wasn't paying attention, little one.
The
But
place was covered in clearance signs. It was ridiculous.
yeah, but I mean the parking lot was I'd consider it about normal. But on I think Black Friday it was a little less than normal. Certainly wasn't anything more than normal. That was what was really weird. And the um, pallets of special price stuff, they were just sitting there full. It was not moving. So yeah, it's really different time. Yeah, John, this global warming thing. Um,
It's climate change.
no, it isn't. The climate changes all the time. They call that weather. Uh, say the reason we're supposed to stop making carbon dioxide is to keep the globe from warming. So it's global warming, not climate change. That's the issue, supposedly.
Yeah.
You know.
But they now decided global warming didn't work because it's cold everywhere.
Well, I don't care what they decide. I refuse to play their game. They say it's climate change. Like, oh, what? It didn't warm? Go ahead. Come on, bring it. It's climate change. What's wrong with global warming? You know. Yeah, resort dog. Say no problem. Yeah, with you, Goldstream, that makes perfect sense. I'm surprised at how warm it is right now. It's 33 degrees right now here in Helena, and that's basically wow. The internet's slow. Well, 31 degrees it says now. Jeez. As elites arrive in Davos, conspiracy theories thrive online.
Conspiracy theories are just next week's news.
Why is this not? Let's just move that and hopefully it. Why is that not closing? Oh, I hate that part. No, I don't want to see more. I want you to shut up. How do I close this little one? Because that's the big screen there.
I'm coming. Don't touch anything.
See, even when I put it over here, it doesn't just go away. It's from that thing right there.
There you go.
Okay.
That's one way to get rid of it anyway.
Did anyone see a public TV program, The Walmartization of America? I didn't.
Oh, but I'm familiar with the concept.
I don't know if the CO2 helps shield us from the UV, but I'll say we shall. Looking at some nice melted glacier next summer. Yeah. Internet's been slow here all day. It seems to be running a little funky on me too.
Oh, it's
Today.
running funky on my phone. The Verizon network is running funky.
Is that Verizon?
On my phone, yeah.
Should be 20 to 30 degrees below zero here in Minnesota in January. I presume that means it's not, John? To say it's pretty warm here. Oh, it says dense fog. Really? I didn't see it just a minute ago. Let me try it again. No, there's no dense fog out there.
Not right now.
Nope.
There was dense fog earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Up here it was, that 30 degrees below zero last month. Hope it doesn't get that cold soon here because I didn't get all the insulation done I was planning on. Let's see. Excuse me. Yeah, 10 days still, the highs around freezing, the lows in the teens. Really quite pleasant weather for winter. Yeah.
It's clement.
Yeah, good luck on that one in the immediate future, Keith. They're not going to give up their power easy. Mid 30s in southwest Pennsylvania. Well, YouTube is always screwed up. It's supposed to be about 50 tomorrow, huh? Yep. Didn't Musk cut a deal for Google also? Not to my knowledge. I think he might have floated an idea, but I don't think he actually made a big offer.
Yeah, they wouldn't let him get away with it anyway.
Yeah. Outlier says internet porn has also been slow too. Not necessarily a bad thing. Oh, bait. Bait. B. Oh, that would be quite frustrating, I would think, to watch that. Yeah, it's last month was the coldest I've ever seen it here. Of course, I've only been here a couple of years. Well, it looks like we just shooting the shit. So, since the feces has been adequately ventilated, I think I'll go to bed here. We'll see, Keith. We shall see. I agree. I won't believe it till I see it, but hopefully. Okay, you take care, Paul. Well, I'm gonna let y'all go. I'll see about posting something in the next couple of days just to let y'all know I made it, and then we'll see how it goes from there. So, happy prospecting and keep it safe out there.